Chapter 1159. You don't want to kill innocent people by mistake? Xiaochang Tian suddenly let out a long laugh and mocked. Does that mean you still plan to kill all of us? Is it that strange to kill us? Jun Moxie also laughed mockingly. I only want to see if you dare to step out since you dare to do it. Haha, why wouldn't I dare? This old man will be the first. Xiaochang Tian's face was filled with killing intent as he took a step forward and glared at Jun Moxie. I want to see if this old man will be the one in charge of this matter. Yes, there's a battle here, and it is very intense. But this old man will not come to help, and I will not allow anyone to come. Why? How do you want to seek justice? Saint Monarch Thunderclap, Jibo 1, also took a step forward. This old man also does not approve of wasting our limited forces on a bunch of shin beasts. Allies? Reinforcements? They are not worthy. If Manor Lord Jun wishes to seek justice for them, then this old man will also join in. Both of them looked at Jun Moxie, their smiles full of mockery and ridicule. Don't forget about us. Behind the two of them, another 40 to 50 people stood up one after another. All of them crossed their arms and looked at Jun Moxie coldly. They were obviously watching him make a fool of himself. Punishment? Truly laughable. Who could punish 2 saint monarchs, 5 saint venerables, over 20 holy emperors, and over 20 saints at once? This was already half of the Heaven Saint Palace's strength. Who dared to say that he would kill them all? The law does not punish the masses. This phrase always makes sense. Let alone a puny, evil monarch like you. What capabilities do you have to punish us? Do you have the capabilities? We have protected the continent for thousands of years. We are without a doubt the greatest heroes of this continent. How much have you contributed to the world at such a young age? And now, you want to punish us for a few shin beasts? Kill us? What a joke. Seeing so many people slowly walking out, Guhan's heart sank more and more. Sank to the bottom. He felt his vision turning black, and his body swayed. He knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. It was completely huge. After observing Jun Moxie for a period of time, he had gained a better understanding of his temper. This fellow would never succumb to threats. Today's lineup, if it was anyone else, as long as that person still had the slightest sense of the overall situation, they wouldn't be able to cause a ruckus. Even if he was humiliated, he could only let it go. But was Jun Moxie that kind of person? Jun Moxie's character was to become stronger when facing strong opponents. He had never compromised before. Using this kind of method to threaten him would only backfire. Guhan sighed in despair in his heart. If the people from the Holy Land who were guarding the war for seizing the heavens could come up with a reason, such as they really couldn't come out, and then they could sincerely admit their mistakes, and then he could mediate between them, there might be a slight chance of this matter being settled. Even if Jun Moxie still wanted to settle the score, it would not be at this place and now. But now, with so many people standing out, there was no way to turn the situation around. Guhan clearly knew that Jun Moxie definitely had a reason for coming to this battlefield. But it was definitely not for the sake of the world. And it was definitely not for the sake of the 3 holy lands. If he was really forced into a corner, then this fellow would definitely not hesitate to destroy the entire continent to take revenge for his brothers. Facing this kind of troublemaker, only using softness to overcome hardness was the correct method. But now, this bunch of idiots had already caused the matter to go out of control. The 47 people on the other side all crossed their arms and looked at Jun Moxie disdainfully. So what if we humiliate you? So what if we don't have reinforcements? Do you really dare to start a war? The consequences of this war would be the destruction of the world, and the lives of the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Just based on you, Jun Moxie, can you bear this responsibility? If a war really breaks out, then if there are any serious consequences, you, Jun Moxie, will be the main culprit. Trying to buy people's hearts by putting on airs? Asking for an explanation? Kid, you're dreaming too much at such a young age. Guhan looked at their expressions and could clearly see what they were thinking. At this moment, including Mo Wudao, all of them were sighing heavily. They were speechless to the extreme. Idiots, fools. They really think that they're the hero. When did he, Jun Moxie care about the lives of the world. As for the main culprit, he would not care about it at all. Do whatever you want. I'm just like this. This is Jun Moxie. You guys are playing with fire. It was no wonder. Xiaochang Tian and the rest did not even know what kind of person Jun Moxie was. If they knew of Jun Moxie's past deeds, they would not have done things so ruthlessly. If they knew that Jun Moxie had once braved the curses of the entire world for the sake of Guanqing Han, Xiaochang Tian and the rest would definitely not have done this. Furthermore, at that time, they had not forced Jun Moxie yet. Jun Moxie still did it. As for now, there was no suspense at all. Is there anyone else? Jun Moxie smiled strangely as he asked calmly. The remaining people all looked at each other, but no one stood out. The demon pupil saint, Lung Tong, stood in the middle of the formation, his face filled with anger. They had naturally heard of the battle here. In fact, there were even some who had come to watch. But when these people suggested to provide assistance, they were mercilessly berated by the two saint monarchs. In fact, many of them had even suffered quite a bit in order to come to help. Now that things had developed to such a state, they were also feeling extremely guilty and anxious in their hearts. If internal strife really broke out at a time like this, it would definitely not be a good thing. In fact, the safety of the entire continent might even be destroyed by this internal strife. Lung Tong had mentioned this possibility before. However, the two great sages were completely unmoved and could only sigh helplessly. What a huge formation! Jun Moxie laughed loudly as he suddenly strode out. Clang! The cry of a sword pierced through the air. A sword suddenly appeared, as if it had suddenly burrowed its way out of the void. The blade of the sword gleamed coldly as it hung silently in the air. There was a faint blood-red glow on the blade of the sword, and a chilling, killing intent and majestic sword intent gushed out. Volcanoes were erupting all around, and the weather was already scorching hot. The temperature here was already so high that it made one's hair stand on end. But the moment this sword appeared, the temperature between heaven and earth instantly became much cooler. Moreover, a bone-piercing chill was slowly growing. Although this sword did not move at all, it attracted everyone's attention. Guhan almost exclaimed in shock. This sword was the demon sword that had fought against Zhan Luanhui. Even Guhan was extremely fearful of the might of this sword. The moment this demon sword appeared, all the hope that Guhan had in his heart turned into despair. The continent was finished. Jun Moxie's killing intent had already been aroused. This demon-slaughtering sword was his killing weapon. This battle was unavoidable. No matter who won or lost this battle, the losses would definitely be huge. There was already a huge disparity in strength between them and the strange races, and with this sudden change, there was no longer any suspense. They would definitely lose. Good sword. The lightning saint monarch Xiaochang Tian's eyes turned cold as he stared at Jun Moxie's face. Looks like you really want to be stubborn today. The safety of the world, the billions of lives in the world, you don't even place them in your eyes? The safety of the world and the people of the continent. Ha ha! Jun Mo Xia laughed mournfully. My brother has come for the safety of the world and for the people of the continent. But even until my brothers died in battle, they did not see the world coming to their aid. When my brothers died in battle, the people of the world stood by the side and watched the show. Ha ha ha! Jun Moxie laughed crazily, tears almost flowing out of his eyes. Now, you're talking to me about the safety of the world and the lives of the continent? Xiaochang Tian, don't you think you're too shameless? Xiaochang Tian and Jibo looked at each other, seeing the meaning in each other's eyes. They'd miscalculated. They naturally would not place Jun Moxie in their eyes. But the impact of this battle was huge. There were 10,000 Tian FA soldiers here, and all of them were experts. If this battle really broke out, it would be a complete rupture. Then, even without the strange races doing anything, the world would already be finished. Originally, they thought that in front of the world, Jun Moxie would have some reservations no matter what. He wouldn't really make a move. But from the looks of it, they were wrong. Manor Lord Jun, can you allow this old man to say something? Guhan sighed, and without waiting for Jun Moxie to speak, he hurriedly said, "The enemy is right in front of us. An internal strife is not an auspicious thing. On account of this old man's face, can you postpone today's matter for now?" Xiaochang Tian and the rest were wrong, but right now, the war still needs them. How about allowing them to redeem themselves? After this war, for seizing the heavens, this old man will definitely give Manor Lord Jun a satisfactory explanation, even if I have to risk this life of mine. No. Jun Moxie shook his head slowly but firmly. My brothers died here. Their corpses are not even cold yet. Their souls are not far away. They are looking at me, waiting for me to give them an explanation. I don't want them to wait too long. Manor Lord Jun, please reconsider. Guhan stepped forward anxiously. Guhan, if you can't bear to part with your brothers, you can join forces with them to deal with me. Even if the 3 Holy Lands and the Heaven Saint Palace join forces, I, Jun Moxie, will still take them on. It doesn't matter. Jun Moxie looked at him coldly. Lang Lang said, "But if these people don't die, my conscience will not be at ease. For the sake of the world, can't you just bear with it for a while?" Guhan cried out agitatedly. "I, Jun Moxie, swear here." Jun Moxie laughed maniacally and said coldly, "From today onwards, from this moment onwards, whoever dares to say the word for the world in front of me will die." Guhan's face was red with anxiety, but he blocked in front of Jun Moxie, refusing to let him pass. "Get out of the way," Jun Mo-xie said indifferently. "I'll count to 3. If you don't get out of the way, I'll kill you. If you don't move aside, I'll immediately give the order. All Tian Fa warriors will immediately fight to the death with the 3 Holy Lands." Guhan's body shook, and he was dumbfounded, unable to say a word. He believed that Jun Moxie would definitely be able to do it. This evil monarch, who was evil to the core, could not be understood with common sense. "1. Jun Mo-xie uttered one word indifferently. The blood of yellow flame above his head let out a cheerful cry, and its entire body shone brightly. On the tip of the sword, there was a 5-zhong long sword light, blazing white. 2. Jun Moxie's eyes were as cold as ice, not changing at all. The blood of yellow flame buzzed, and the sword light changed direction, pointing straight at Guhan's forehead. Guhan's face was filled with conflict, and cold sweat poured down his forehead. Jun Moxie cannot care, but he could not. 3. Jun Moxie shouted, "Everyone listen up. Present. Mei Shuiyan, Bear King, Tiger King, Crane King, Solitary Eagle, and Feng Wan Yun stepped forward at the same time." Jun Moxie roared and slashed down with his palm. "Unsheathe your sword. Target everyone from the 3 Holy Lands. All of you wait." Before Jun Moxie could say the word kill, Guhan shouted, and his body trembled. "This old man will retreat." Then he roared, "Everyone from the 3 Holy Lands, do not make any rash moves. Follow this old man and retreat to the side. If you dare to move, kill without mercy." With a single order, everyone from the 3 Holy Lands retreated from the scene, looking at Jun Moxie with fear in their eyes. This fellow, he really dares? Only the original 47 people were left on the scene, facing the lonely Jun Moxie. Xiaochang Tian, Jibo 1. Jun Moxie roared, "Use your heads and give me an explanation. Little Eagle, my fellow brothers, your souls are not far away. Watch me take back justice for you." The howling winds rose in the sky, and the entire earth and sky turned bleak and desolate with Jun Mo-xie's loud roar. "Arrogant brat, this old man wants to see who will be the one to take whose head." Xiaochang Tian sneered. "All you back off. This old man will personally experience the methods of this evil monarch. No one is allowed to leave. Everyone who doesn't want help can all die for me." Before he finished speaking, Jun Mo-xie's body had already soared into the air. While he was in midair, countless black swords suddenly appeared around him, all of them gleaming with a cold light. 9 of the Frostblade. The blood of yellow flame whistled through the air. The sword light lit up the entire sky. "Inyang escape." Jun Moxie roared and suddenly disappeared in midair. This caused Xiaochang Tian, who was about to attack, to lose his target. Power of the 5 elements. Erupt for me. Another roar rang out. All of a sudden, countless fire dragons appeared in the sky, surrounding the entire area. The scorching flames caused the air to tremble. Countless amounts of water rose from the ground and poured down from the sky. On the ground, there was a rumbling sound, and a large crater with a radius of several thousand feet appeared. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. As for Xiaochang, Tian, and the rest, a large number of them were caught off guard and fell into the pit. The walls of the pit also glowed with the color of metal. Power of metal, imprisonment. Following that, Jun Moxie, who was hiding in the air, roared, and the entire world seemed to darken. The boundless black flames turned into fine black snowflakes that fell from the sky and fell slowly, covering an area of several hundred zhang. It was just enough to cover the entire entrance of the huge pit. Flame of primal chaos. This was the first time Jun Moxie had used all his trump cards to kill. Right here, for his brothers who had died in battle. He disregarded all consequences and attacked with all his might. Crazily attacking. Chapter 1160. There were a few mistakes in this chapter. My apologies. It has been amended. Many thanks to brother Ao Xieyun for the reminder. Thank you. I can only try my best to ensure that there will not be any similar mistakes in the future. Since you guys are not willing to give me an explanation, then I can only come and take it myself. This explanation, even if the mountains crumble, even if the heavens collapse, even if the universe shatters, even if the human race is wiped out, it will still be the same, nothing more. My brother's justice has nothing to do with the lives of the world. Destruction of the world? That's not because of me. Even if the universe collapses, this daddy will only do what I should do. Now this is what I should be doing. When Xiaochang Tian and the rest saw that Guhan and the rest were not willing to stand up for them, they could not remain calm. They were both furious and fearful at the same time. Could it be that we've really done wrong? Jun Mo Xie didn't seem to care about the greater good. Although he was extremely angry, he didn't care too much about the situation in front of him. In the previous battle, Tian Fa had suffered great losses. A total of 8 Saint Venerables had fallen, and more than 80% of the 6,000 Tian Fa warriors had perished. Right now, in Tian Fa's camp, only Jun Moxie and Mei Xuan were at the Saint Venerable level, and there was also Big Bear who had just entered the Saint Venerable realm. The rest were only at the Saint Emperor level. Although there were less than 50 people on his side, the weakest had already reached the Saint level. Jibo Wen and himself were even 3rd level Saint Monarchs. Although they could not compare to Guhan, who was at the peak of the 3rd level Saint Monarch level. From the looks of it, they were on a completely different level from Jun Mo Xie's side. As long as they were careful of the self-detonation attacks of Tian Fa's Xian beasts, they believed that everything would be under control. Even if they destroyed Tian Fa and then dealt with the strange races, they might not necessarily lose. At that time, Guhan would not even protect his own brothers and watch us fight to the death. Why does he have to be the #1 person in the Heaven Saint Palace? Xiaochang Tian and the rest were filled with wishful thinking. Facing Jun Moxie's brazen attack, Xiaochang Tian and the rest naturally did not feel the slightest bit of fear or cowardice. Just as they were about to retaliate, they were suddenly engulfed by a strange fire. The countless fire dragons that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had instantly blocked everyone's line of sight, blocking everything within this strange fire. This fire came too suddenly. Instantaneous movement, instantaneous fire dragon attack to complete the interference of the enemy's line of sight. This kind of attack seemed to be the first time in the history of this world. However, the effect was obvious. The people stationed at the heaven-seizing army were all experts in the world. Their battle experience could be said to be unparalleled. Although they were facing such a shocking change, they were still able to remain calm. As a matter of fact, the appearance of this spark was only a little unexpected, but it really couldn't do anything to them. However, the instant of shock when it appeared was unavoidable. Following that, Just as everyone's thoughts changed and they wanted to circulate their xianqi to control the fire, they didn't even have the time to react. The ground beneath their feet seemed to have turned into an abyss in an instant, and they were all caught off guard as they fell into the abyss. One could not help but admit that the mental fortitude of these people was truly shocking. More than half of them actually managed to stabilize their mental fortitude, and with a schwa sound, they gathered their xianqi to find the right direction and escape. However, right at this moment, there was a sudden explosion above his head with a loud rumble. Countless majestic water pillars poured down with the momentum of 100 rivers converging, and the momentum was vast and surging. It was as if the Milky Way had suddenly opened up a gap, and the water pillars were several tens of meters thick, and they came smashing down from above. Every single one of these streams of water had the force of 1,000 caddies. It was unstoppable. The area of this huge pit was extremely large. Although these people were all peak experts with rich experience in facing enemies, after this sudden change, even though their minds were not in a mess, they did not have the time to escape in time. Suddenly, they were hit by the water pillar that fell from the void. With a bang, they fell down solidly. For a moment, everyone felt as if they had encountered a nightmare. No matter how strong their mental fortitude was, they were still terrified. They only felt that everything that was happening around them was too strange, too unimaginable, and it was not something that could happen in this world. Everything was so unreal that it was no different from a nightmare. The place where they were standing was clearly a thick piece of flat ground. Where did the inexplicable fire come from? If there was a fire, there should be something to ignite it, right? But there was clearly not a single thing that could ignite the fire here. If it was an illusion, what a joke. How could there be such a real illusion in this world? The feeling of being burned by the fire was completely real. As for the water, the clouds in the sky were still rushing quickly. Under the crazy sweeping of the level 9 hurricane, they ran faster than any peerless expert. So how could it suddenly rain at this moment? But if it was not raining, then where did the water come from? Besides, even if it was really raining, it shouldn't be so heavy and so dense. With a boom, under the impact of the torrent, all the experts from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens were smashed into a large pit. There were a total of 47 peak experts from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens. Apart from the 2 Saint Monarchs, 3 Saint Venerables, and 2 level 4 Holy Emperor, the rest had all fallen. It was not that the stronger the person, the stronger their ability to resist the sudden change. In truth, all those who were lucky enough to survive were people with excellent mental fortitude and were able to remain calm in the face of danger. With a sudden change, the moment one's mental fortitude was disturbed, one's ability to deal with it would naturally be greatly reduced. There was no lack of super experts among the 40 people who fell, including 2 Saint Venerable experts who had already reached the level of Saint Venerable. They were also caught off guard and fell into the pit. The surging water continued to pour into the pit, and what was even more inconceivable was that at the bottom of the pit, over 100 fountains as thick as the mouth of a well had suddenly appeared. With a loud boom, the entire pit was as lively as a hurricane in the ocean. That sound was deafening. Every single expert from the camp for the war for seizing the heavens was a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles. What kind of situation had they not seen before? Although they had been caught off guard and had fallen into a dangerous situation, it did not mean that they would just sit there and wait for death. Each of them used their own methods and tried to break out of this predicament. Some of them directly rushed upwards, but the water was boundless, and no matter how powerful they were, it was impossible for them to break through. Some of them rushed to the walls of the pit and used their martial arts to attack, trying to create a large pit or directly punch a path out of the ground. But after doing this for a while, they discovered in despair that even if they used all their strength, they could only punch a depth of half a zhang. The hardness of the walls of the pit was actually 30% harder than steel. This was clearly an ordinary ground before. Why did it suddenly change? There were also some experts who sat down cross-legged. They treated everything in front of them as an illusion created by June Moxie, an illusory thing like a demon in one's heart. Against illusions, as long as one's mind was clear and one ignored it. No matter how real it was, it would naturally dissipate when it reached its limit. It had to be said that this method was indeed the best to deal with illusions and demons in one's heart. One cannot help but praise these experts for their superb mental fortitude. But when their bodies were covered in blisters and their clothes and hair were all burned away, they finally discovered this was not an illusion. This was all real, a fire that could really burn people to death. After falling down and struggling for a while, everyone discovered that the water was not small, and the fire was not small either. But to them, it could only cause a moment of trouble, and it was still far from being fatal. The water was indeed deep, but it was not enough to drown so many experts, as long as they used the turtle breathing technique. With the attainments of these people, cutting off their breathing for half a day or even half a month was not a big deal. Fire could indeed burn people to death, but this person would only be an ordinary person. To these peak experts, there was not much meaning. At most, their clothes, pants, hair, eyebrows, body hair, all the hair would be burnt, but it would not be able to cause any further harm. After a while, the people who had fallen down all surfaced from the surface of the water. And it was still the same people, not a single one missing. All that was left was the problem of how to go up. No matter how high and big the pit was, could it really stop so many Saint Venerables and the Holy Emperor? That would be a real joke. Therefore, the experts at the camp for the war for seizing the heavens all calmed down. But at this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "This water! Why did the water suddenly turn cold?" Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Indeed, they could feel that the temperature of the water was dropping at a shocking speed. A moment ago, it was still like a normal river, but now, it had already become bone-chilling cold. The next moment, there was no next moment. The crowd didn't even have the time to react. They didn't even know what was happening, but suddenly, a series of cracking noise could be heard. Within a couple of seconds, such a deep and wide water level was turned into ice. It had actually frozen everyone within. However, the change wasn't over yet. The temperature was still dropping, and the ice was still letting out a series of cracking noise, turning harder and harder. At a lightning speed, the ice was actually turning into ice. And this momentum was actually getting faster and faster, as if there was no end to it. Sheen ice was a high-grade material that would not even melt under the scorching sun. In terms of toughness, it was even stronger than steel. Anyone who had studied physics knew that when water turned into ice, because of the density, the volume would increase slightly. If the volume was small, this change would not be too obvious. But with the volume of the pit, this sudden change would increase the volume by quite a bit. And this sudden change brought about a strong pressure that could be said to be extremely shocking. The experts at the camp for the war for seizing the heavens all gritted their teeth and gathered all their strength, trying their best to resist this terrifying pressure that they had never experienced before. It was not that they could not use their xianqi to break out of the ice, but the problem was if one of them broke out of the ice first, then their old brothers who were not too far away from them would definitely be affected by the explosion. Serious injuries were unavoidable. This time, everyone finally began to panic, because it was impossible for everyone to break out at the same time. Once they broke out, there would definitely be sacrifices, and it was possible that one of them would be injured, or even more. They were all old brothers who had accompanied each other for hundreds and thousands of years. How could they let their brothers get injured for the sake of their own lives? Chapter 1161. Today's second update. Continuing to work hard. What should we do? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Their gazes were saying the same thing, the same 3 words. Amongst the experts in the camp for the war for seizing the heavens, the weakest had already reached the saint realm. There were even some Saint Venerables amongst them. But now, they were trapped in the ice, unable to move, and unable to do anything. If such an encounter were to be spread out, it would definitely be a huge joke. But this joke in the eyes of the world was an iron-like fact, and no one could doubt it. In the short period of time that they were hesitating, the ice started to change once again. With a series of cracking sounds, it turned into a jade-like color with a speed visible to the naked eye. The appearance of this color meant that the ice was no longer solid ice, but shin ice. These pieces of ice that had just been condensed by the water, in the time it took to snap a finger, completed the long process of transforming the ice of the snowy mountains into shin ice, a process that would normally take tens of thousands of years. It was almost done in one step. But this change did not stop. Not only was the water changing, the walls of the pit were also changing, becoming harder and harder. It was actually compressing the huge piece of shin ice from all directions, crazily compressing towards the center. As it was compressing, it actually continued to solidify. Such a terrifying and mystical change gradually appeared in the eyes of the people present. The profound being quickly formed, and the light it possessed became more and more dazzling, becoming more and more transparent, and its relative size also became smaller and smaller. In the end, the originally gigantic, profound being seemed to have disappeared from the world, and looking down from above, one could clearly see 40 people floating in midair without any hindrance. Water, ice, shin ice, everything seemed to have disappeared. However, everyone clearly understood and felt that the layer of ice had simply disappeared. It had merely transformed into something else. Everyone had only heard of it in legends, but had never seen it with their own eyes. Essence of ice. Essence of ice could be said to be the ultimate essence of ice. Even an ancient ice mountain that had existed for tens of thousands of years might not be able to produce a piece of essence of ice the size of a human head. But right now, Jun Moxie had created a piece of essence of ice that was at least a few hundred zhong wide in the blink of an eye. Such a method could truly be said to have stolen the fortune of the heavens. The essence of ice, a priceless treasure. If a fist-sized chunk of essence of ice could be fused with steel and forged by a renowned weaponsmith, the weapon forged would definitely be invincible. It would truly be a godly weapon that could slice through steel like mud. Even if an ordinary person who didn't know any Xianqi held it, they would be able to cut steel that had been tempered 100 times like tofu. If it was a complete sword made of essence of ice, its power would be even more shocking. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, the sky and earth froze, and frost flew for 100 miles. But in front of them, countless people yearned for it. Countless people were intoxicated. Such a huge divine ice pith had appeared in front of everyone. Was this a beautiful dream or a nightmare? With the appearance of the essence of ice, the transformation finally came to an end. Regardless of what it meant to others, to the people who were frozen in the essence of ice, this divine object that they had once yearned for even in their dreams was nothing but a nightmare, an unspeakable misery. Everyone inside could not move at all. This was the legendary essence ice. It could be said that the essence ice was sharper than any divine weapon in the world. As long as any one of them moved, the other 39 people would immediately suffer the pain of being pierced by 10,000 swords. Even with the strength of their bodies, they would not be able to withstand the attack of 10,000 swords. If they were trapped in an open space and were trapped in this essence of ice, these 40 people could try to exert their strength at the same time, explode together, and fly out at the same time. Although this required a rather precise grasp, it was not a big problem for these experts. In fact, they might not be able to avoid some casualties, but most of them would still be able to escape unscathed. But the real problem now was that this huge essence of ice was placed in a huge pit, and it was perfectly embedded in it. And the walls of the pit around it were even harder than the essence of ice. If 40 people tried to explode at the same time, then the only chance of success would be to shake the essence of ice, the walls, and even the ground. Only then would they be able to truly escape. Although everyone here was an expert, they did not have the confidence to do so. And if they failed, it meant that each of the 40 people would have to bear the combined attack of the other 39 people. The result was very simple, and there was no second result. All 40 of them would turn into 40 lumps of bloody flesh at the same time. No one was an exception. And under such extreme cold, even a Saint Venerable's holy infant might not be able to escape. Right now, the only thing they could do was to wait for reinforcements. Because there was no other way. They could only wait for Xia Chong Tian and Ji Bo Wen to emerge victorious, and then think of a way to save them from the outside. After all, no one would die in a short period of time. Although they could not leave for the time being, as long as they did not make any rash moves, it was not a problem for them to hold out for 10 days to half a month. With Xia Chong Tian and Ji Bo when Saint Monarch level strength, they would definitely be able to defeat Jun Moxie and Tian Fa's Xian Beasts easily. At that time, whether it was destroying the mountain or forcing Jun Moxie to melt the Xian ice, they would definitely be able to save everyone. Thinking up to here, everyone who had confidence in Xia Chong Tian and the rest all heaved a sigh of relief. But what they did not know was that this was merely the appetizer that Jun Moxie had prepared. The killing move that Jun Moxie had arranged was still lingering in the air. It had only descended at this moment. The flame of primal chaos. Only the flame of primal chaos was truly fatal. Although the Xian ice and essence of ice were powerful, they only had one use. And that was to prevent them from moving. The flame of primal chaos in the sky did not cover a very large area. It only covered a radius of 1,000 feet. It floated leisurely down from the sky at an extremely slow speed. With this kind of attack range, this kind of attack speed, any venerable and above experts would be able to dodge it easily. The threat was very limited. If it could not hit its target, everything would be for naught. But in this situation where everyone could not move, it was a different matter. As long as the attack range of the flame of primal chaos was larger than the Xian ice, it would be sufficient. It was enough to make one unable to reincarnate. When the flame of primal chaos descended, there was truly no blind spot. In truth, this 100-zhang radius of the flame of primal chaos was already Jun Moxie's full strength. No, this was the full strength of the Hongjun Pagoda that he could currently use. Xia Chong Tian and Ji Bo Wen, these two Saint Venerables, could be said to be seething with anger because of Jun Moxie. Just as they were about to make a move, they were surprised to see a sky full of flames, followed by a torrential flood. Following that, with a loud bang, everything changed completely out of their control. First, the thick ground beneath their feet suddenly turned into a bottomless pit. 8 or 9 out of 10 of his brothers had fallen into the water. The two of them had the highest cultivation. Even if their feet were in the air, they could still maintain their footing as though they were walking on flat ground. Although the other 3 Saint Venerables and 2 Holy Emperors did not have this kind of cultivation, because of their strong wills, they did not panic in the face of danger. Borrowing strength from each other, they managed to escape 100 zhang away in an instant. By the time they managed to stabilize themselves, the water above them was boundless, and there was no deep pit at all. If they had not escaped in time, even if they had not fallen, they would have been washed down by the water. With such a sudden change, 40 people had already disappeared from their original positions. Jun Moxie, what the hell are you doing? Xia Chong Tian stood in the air and cursed in a flustered and exasperated manner. To actually use such underhanded methods to scheme against others. Someone as shameless as you. How can you be called an overlord? Overlord? I've never thought of becoming an overlord. Jun Moxie's voice drifted over. Xia Chong Tian, the only thing I want right now is for you to seek justice for me. Let my brothers rest in peace in the netherworld. That's all. Xia Chong Tian did not hesitate to lower his status to scold Jun Moxie, hoping that he would be able to capture him in one fell swoop. This brat was too slippery, actually using his concealment technique at the start of the battle. How could he fight when he could not even see? Although Xia Chong Tian's cultivation was high, he was not Xiaoing after all. He did not have the all-seeing eye and was unable to see through the concealment technique. In fact, Jun Daxiao's cultivation had improved again recently, and even if Xiaoing was here, she might not be able to see through his yin-yang escape technique. Right now, Jun Mo Xie had spoken as he wished, but his voice was extremely faint. Even with the cultivation of Saint Monarchs like Xia Chong Tian and Ji Bo Wen, They were unable to see where he was hiding. In fact, they could not even tell which direction he was hiding in. This was truly strange. In the sky, the dense cluster of black flames descended gracefully. Xiaochang Tian did not pay much attention to these paper ashes. He continued to look around warily, trying his best to find traces of Jun Moxia, hoping that he could kill him in a single strike. Jun Dashao was not only in the illusory state of the yin-yang escape technique, his entire body had entered the Hongjun Pagoda, and only his head could be seen. Of course, Xiaochang Tian would not be able to find him. However, Jun Dashao's current state was also extremely miserable, and he was unable to bear the burden. This was the first time he had unleashed all his energy to the limit. Just the power of the 5 elements had already caused his spiritual energy to fall into a state where he could not hold on any longer. With no other choice, he had fused his mental energy with the Hongjun Pagoda, using the energy of the Hongjun Pagoda to turn water into ice, then into Xian ice, and finally into essence of ice. Following that was the flame of primal chaos, scattering out in all directions. But even after fusing with the Hongjun Pagoda, he could only scatter this much flame of primal chaos anymore, and Jun Moxie would not be able to bear it. Even if Jun Moxie wanted to, the Hongjun Pagoda would stop him, because with Jun Moxie's current strength, he could only unleash this much of the Hongjun Pagoda's power anymore, and he would only suffer a backlash. The result of that backlash would only be the destruction of his soul. But for now, this was enough. Very enough. Jun Moxie's face was pale, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Ling looked at the huge pit on the ground mercilessly. Is this unbearable? The real unbearable thing was yet to come. Chapter 1162. Today's third night. Chapter 14. F***CK. Everyone must be getting impatient. It's already 2 p.m. Right at this time, Jibo suddenly roared out. Jun Moxie, come out. Come out for this, daddy. If you're a man, then scram out for this, daddy. You cowardly bastard who only knows how to use underhanded methods. As a saint monarch, when had Jibo ever lost his composure like this before? But right now, he could not endure it no matter what. When he'd lowered his head earlier, he discovered something strange about the crater. Originally, he and Xiaochang Tian had the same thought. No matter what tricks you have, you won't be able to threaten us. Even the weakest among us is at the saint realm. How could we be burned to death by a single flame? That would be the biggest joke in the world. Even if you can bring out more water, so what? At most, you'll be able to suppress it for a while. No one will die no matter what. Can you maintain it for such a long time? As long as the water slows down, everyone will be able to jump out immediately. At that time, your strength will not be affected at all. With just you, Jun Moxie, no matter how strong you are, can you deal with all 47 of us at the same time? Not to mention a mere Jun Moxie. Even if it was Guhan, Gouda, he would not be able to do it. But in that instant when he'd lowered his head, he discovered that the water had clearly stopped, but not a single one of them had come out. Then, when he took a closer look, he was truly shocked. Black ice. It was actually black ice. How could there be black ice in this place? One had to know that more than half of the volcanoes were still erupting, and the temperature was so hot that it could roast people. But black ice had actually appeared here? Jibo could not believe his own eyes. When he regained his composure and looked again, he couldn't help but exclaim in shock. In the blink of an eye, the black ice had turned into essence of ice. Faced with such an unimaginable miracle, Jibo only had a single thought. It's over. The 40 people below could basically be declared finished, unless Jun Moxie changed his mind and let them out. Otherwise, only a few of them would be able to survive. Being enveloped within the essence of ice, the degree of danger had already reached a place where only a slim chance of survival was left. Being trapped together with their brothers, none of them dared to move. They couldn't even move a muscle. Any reckless move would implicate his brothers and comrades. At this moment, the essence of ice was in a complete state, so there was no danger for the time being. However, As long as there was the slightest reckless movement or the interference of an external force that caused the essence of ice to shatter, it would be equivalent to countless sharp swords that could slice through iron like mud, launching indiscriminate attacks from all directions. When everyone used their profound energy to protect themselves, they might be able to shatter a portion of the ice pith, but it was absolutely impossible for them to completely shatter it. Moreover, the shattered essence ice wouldn't disappear after shattering. Instead, it would transform into smaller, sharper weapons, and its destructive power wouldn't necessarily decrease by much. Xiaochang Tian and Jibo, whence faces finally paled. They finally understood Jun Moxie's sinister intentions, and they had also thoroughly understood how vicious Jun Mo Xie's so-called revenge was. There were still ripples in the air, and Jun Moxie still didn't give any response. But this time, the flame of primal chaos had already descended. Although it was descending slowly, it was still descending. In truth, this slow descent was the most torturous torture. It was far more terrifying than being sliced into two. At this time, Xiaochang Tian felt that something was wrong. Something was wrong from the bottom of his heart. The black flame of primal chaos that was only a few feet above his head actually gave him an indescribable feeling of death. As a Saint Monarch expert, it had been a long time since he had experienced such a feeling of being on the brink of life and death. With a clang, his sword was unsheathed. Xiaochang Tian raised his sword and infused it with his strongest and most vigorous Xian Qi before spitting it out fiercely. A sword light that was 30 feet long pierced through the air and struck the flame of primal chaos. The flame of primal chaos in the air actually maintained its original descending speed and continued to descend. Such a tyrannical sword Qi. Even if it struck the void, it would still cause a series of ripples and cracks in the air. But right now, it had clearly struck the flame of primal chaos, but the flame of primal chaos was completely unaffected. Even the speed at which it was descending did not change at all. Xiaochang Tian's pupils constricted as his hair stood on end. Just what in the world was this thing? This sword of his, even if the target was a small mountain, even if it couldn't split it into two, it should at least be able to slice off a portion of the mountain. But that strange black flame of primal chaos actually didn't even have any reaction when facing this attack. This was too sinister, right? The flame of primal chaos continued to approach, closer and closer. Xiaochang Tian gritted his teeth, and the sword in his hand slashed out once more, slowly coming into contact with the black flame of primal chaos. A clear and melodious cry of a sword suddenly resounded in the sky. If one listened carefully, it was not difficult to detect that the sword cry was actually mixed with a thick sense of mockery. Only the blood of yellow flame would be able to produce such a human-like sound. This lord danced in the air, appearing extremely lively. As for the meaning of this sword cry, it was very simple. Idiot, didn't you see that the moment that flame of primal chaos appeared, even this lord had to avoid it? You actually used your sword to come into contact with it. You really don't know what's good for you, This lord will mourn for your sword. Xiaochang Tian's sword came into contact with the flame of primal chaos without the slightest bit of resistance. Xiaochang Tian heaved a sigh of relief and increased his Xian Qi, intending to send the ball of flame of primal chaos flying. But under this wave, the flame of primal chaos was still calmly adhering to his sword, burning slowly. It was still as unhurried as before, without any change at all. The real change was in the sword. That sword, Xiaochang Tian's hair stood on end, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That sword of his, that sword that had accompanied him for close to 4,000 years, had actually become shorter. What's going on? Why did it suddenly become shorter? Amidst his shock, the flame of primal chaos continued to burn gracefully, following the body of the sword and burning towards it. Everywhere it passed, there was still no change. There was no smoke, no signs of burning, nothing at all. The only change was that the 3 Qi long sword was now missing by half. So it did not disappear into thin air, but it had been burnt. With just a single touch, half of the sword was gone. What the hell is this thing? Xiaochang Tian's soul almost left his body, and his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. In a moment of shock, he realized that the strange flame was about to reach the hilt of the sword. His hands trembled, and he hurriedly threw the last piece of the sword to the ground. Jibo One, who was by the side, had also used the same method to try and stop the descent of the flame of primal chaos. Naturally, he also met with the same fate. The sword that had accompanied him for so many years had been burnt to ashes in an instant. The two of them exchanged a look, and both of them could see the fear in each other's eyes. The two of them had been stationed in the war for seizing the heavens for over 3,000 years. Their ages were similar, and their cultivations were similar. Even when they were facing countless strange races, there was not a single word of fear in their hearts. But at this moment, the two of them were actually filled with fear. The flame of primal chaos did not matter if you were afraid or not. Right now, it was already right above your head. The two of them cried out loudly and suddenly sprinted away, sticking close to the ground. At this moment, the two of them did not hold back at all, unleashing the maximum strength that a Saint Monarch could muster. With the fastest speed in their lives, they traversed over 100 zhang in the blink of an eye, landing outside of the attack range of the flame of primal chaos. Looking at the flames falling down at a steady speed, completely covering the hole with a circumference of 1,000 feet, the two of them had ashen faces. This was because they had already confirmed one thing, and that was that the 40 brothers below were truly in danger this time. Even the two of them were helpless against this thing, let alone the others. This thing is called the Flame of Primal Chaos. The two of you have probably never seen it before, right? Jun Moxie's voice drifted over, as if he was very tired. There were even a few faint coughs in his voice. Cough, cough, the Flame of Primal Chaos. This thing is a little different from ordinary flames in terms of attributes. It does not fear the 5 elements, nor is it restrained by them. Because it is born, it burns when it comes into contact with water. It burns when it comes into contact with wood. It burns when it comes into contact with metal. In short, in this world, there is nothing that the flame of primal chaos cannot burn. And the saying that there is nothing that it cannot burn naturally includes the human body. Even things like Xin, Qi, and souls are no exception. This should be considered rather accurate, because I really have not found anything in this world that the flame of primal chaos cannot burn. Jun Moxie explained patiently and carefully. The moment this sentence was said, the remaining 7 experts on the outside all revealed expressions of shock and despair. Looking at the huge pit, their faces were filled with grief and indignation. Guhan, Mo Wudao, and the rest who were watching the battle from afar also let out a sorrowful sigh. Everyone's eyes were staring blankly, and their faces were pale. Jun Moxie, where are you, bastard? Come out. Come out for me. Hurry up and come out for me. Xiaochang Tian roared angrily. That arrogant demeanor of a Saint Monarch had long disappeared. All that was left on his face was fear and panic. Jun Moxie, hurry up and retract that damnable flame. Let my brothers out. Xiaochang Tian and Jibo when cried out at the same time. Their voices were filled with panic. At this moment, the two of them could be said to have their hearts fried. Of the people below, the ones who had known each other for the shortest amount of time had at least been together for a few hundred years. Among them, there were many who had been with the two of them for 1,000 years and fought side by side for 2,000 years. Seeing that they had fallen into such a predicament where death was certain, the two of them felt as though their hearts were being torn apart. Even their souls were trembling from the pain. Isn't it very painful? He could only watch helplessly as his brothers, whom he had stayed by his side for thousands of years, fell into a desperate situation. He could only watch helplessly as they stepped onto the path of death, but he was completely powerless and could only watch from the sidelines. Wasn't this feeling very good? Isn't it very satisfying? Chapter 1163. Today's fourth chapter, Making Up for the Debt, Chapter 15. Finally finished, I'm so tired. At this moment, June Moxie's face was as pale as a corpse's. Fresh blood was still flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Mei Shuiyan cried out in shock, looking at June Moxie with a pained expression. She felt as if her heart was being overturned by a tsunami. Others might not know, but how could Mei Shuiyan, who had also cultivated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, not understand? This sort of extreme output was not something June Moxie could achieve with his current strength. But if he didn't do this, he would not be able to get justice for his brother. At the very least, it would be difficult to get justice completely. For the sake of his brother's justice, for the sake of letting his brother rest in peace, June Moxie decisively unleashed a power that he could not endure. Even with the protection of the Hongjun Pagoda, his meridians and mind were still suffering from an abnormally intense backlash. If he maintained the state of merging with the Hongjun Pagoda, he would naturally be fine. But the moment he appeared, he could only use his own body to face all this pain. But he had no choice but to come out, because he had to vent this anger, and also because his brother could not die in vain. The price was right in front of him. Justice was within this patch of flame of primal chaos. He had to settle this debt of gratitude and vengeance. Yes, it was to settle this debt of gratitude and vengeance. My brother's death must be a heroic death. Then my revenge, regardless of whether my brother is dead or alive, must let them all feel at ease. How my brother died, whoever caused this debt, whether it was directly or indirectly, must pay it back. At this time, the flame of primal chaos was already at the same level as the ground, completely covering the huge essence of ice. Those that were above the pit just floated down, still as slow as ever. But the flame of primal chaos that had already landed on the ground also continued to fall at the same speed. Everything on the ground, whether it was a huge rock or a thick layer of soil, as long as it came into contact with a flame of primal chaos, it would be instantly incinerated into nothingness, seeing the flame of primal chaos slowly descend and the lives of his 40 brothers in danger. Xia Changtian's eyes were about to pop out. With a quick step, he appeared in front of June Moxie and roared, "June Moxie, hurry up and retract that will-o-wisp. Let my brothers out." His voice was no longer as arrogant as it was before. It was hoarse, and the corners of his eyes were torn from anxiety. 2 streams of blood flowed down from the corners of his eyes, and his face was as mournful as a ghost's. He, Xia Changtan, Lord Saint Monarch Xia, are you anxious now? Take it easy, take it easy. Look at the sky. June Moxie smiled gently and wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth. Then he stretched out a bloody finger and pointed at the hollow where the chaotic flame had fallen. He said with great interest, "Look carefully. Isn't this hollow different from other places? Very pure, right?" He. Xia Changtian looked up and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The vast area that the primal chaos flame passed through had already become a spatial black hole. The spiritual qi in the air from all directions was rushing toward this direction at high speed, slowly repairing this space on its own. The flame of primal chaos actually burned the real world. If that kind of terrifying power really spread to flesh and blood, Xia Changtian's face turned even paler and his body swayed unsteadily. "What do you want? Only then will you release them? State your conditions. No matter what they are, I will agree to them." Xia Changtian glared at June Moxie viciously. "Conditions? If I had come a step earlier and not meddled in the affairs of some other people, I think I would have asked you as anxiously as you." June and Mo Xia looked at him emotionlessly. "What do you want in order to save my brother?" In the distance, the faces of the people from Heaven's Saint Palace and the 3 holy lands instantly turned pale. If June Moxie had not interfered in the battle against Samsara, with his strange abilities, he would definitely be able to rewrite the numbers of casualties on Tian Fa's side. Were they also indirectly accomplices to him? But if June Moxie had not interfered, how many of Guhan and the rest would be left? That was something that no one could say for sure. Compared to Guhan and the rest, Xia Changtian's condition was even worse. His chest felt like it had been struck by lightning, and his face was pale as he stumbled back a few steps. All the reasons, all the expectations, all the reasons, all the expectations were utterly defeated by Jun Mo Xie's simple rhetorical question. But they are my brothers, ah. Xia Changtian clutched his chest and howled. Let my brothers go. Let my brothers go. Jun Moxie's white robes fluttered as he stood in the air. His hair fluttered in the wind, exuding a ruthless aura. His eyes were cold and filled with satisfaction as he looked at Xia Changtian. Do you feel very uncomfortable in your heart? Haha, that's right, this is exactly the feeling I had earlier. When I heard that the Eagle King had died, the feeling in my heart was exactly the same as yours. It's really the same. Jun Moxie's lips curled into a pitiful smile. It was the kind of smile that came from forcefully suppressing the pain in his heart. Xia Changtian, Saint Monarch Xia, right now the two of us can be considered to be in the same boat. Since we're all in the same boat, why don't we have a toast as we watch these people die? Ji Bowen flew over like he was flying. Second brother Xia, there's not much time left. His tone was filled with pain, and even his voice was filled with the stench of blood. That was the blood of an anxious heart. Xia Changtian's eyes stared listlessly at the huge pit. Hearing the panicked screams coming from within, he felt as if his heart was being torn apart. The people below had already discovered the terror of the flame of primal chaos. Because that terrifying flame had descended just like that, burning everything in its path. It was graceful and elegant, like a monarch descending upon the world. However, that terrifying murderous intent caused everyone's heart to be filled with extreme fear. Xia Changtian's heart was already filled with regret. If he had known it would be like this, why did he do it in the first place? Back then, as long as he gave the order, they would come out to receive him. Then, those 8 Saint Venerables of Tian Fa would definitely not die. Eagle King would also not die. With the intervention of the heaven-seizing army, the casualties of Tian Fa's allied forces would not exceed 1,000 people. Everything would be avoided, but he had insisted on watching coldly from the sidelines, and did not give the order. Watching those soldiers die in battle without lifting a finger, and even felt that it was a feast for the eyes. Now, retribution had come. Right now, it was their turn to feel a feast for the eyes. Jun Moxie, state your conditions. Xia Changtian's entire body trembled. What do you want me to do in order to let my brothers off? Conditions? What conditions? There's no need, no need. A hero of humanity like you, the savior of the continent, with unparalleled achievements, who would dare to raise conditions with you. There's no need to do anything. You could just watch coldly from the sidelines. Jun Moxie said indifferently. Don't you like to watch coldly from the sidelines? Isn't this what you're best at? Right now, there's no need to do anything. You just need to display your best skills once more. The only thing is that the time you can watch from the sidelines is shorter this time. It will be over in just a moment. Just a moment more, and everything will be over. Jun Moxie grinned. Come. In order to express my apologies, this seat will accompany you to watch. Ha! Watching the brothers that you've been with day and night slowly burn, leaving only their bones. Oh no, this seat misspoke. How would there be any bones left? Those bones will also turn into nothingness. In fact, it's not just their bones. Even their souls will be burned into nothingness. I can even guarantee that they won't even have the chance to reincarnate. The so-called cultivation of thousands of years will be turned into nothingness in a single day. Not even ashes will be left. How pleasurable is that? Ha! Us Tian Fa brothers and I were fortunate enough to experience it once just now. And now, because of you, we've been able to enjoy it once more. As the saying goes, give a plum in return for a peach. How can we miss out on such a good thing like this? How can we miss out on all of you who are compassionate heroes, the saviors of mankind? Come, I'll also let you enjoy a little. Enjoy a little. Xia Changtian glared at Jun Moxie, and said with grief and indignation, June Moxie, you have a good appearance, but you don't have the slightest bit of humanity. You're a beast. No wonder you've abandoned yourself to become companions with a bunch of wild beasts. Ah, so you've only realized it now? But I don't think that I've abandoned myself to depravity. To be able to be companions with Tian Fashian beasts with a pure and innocent heart is the most fortunate thing in my life. June Moxie laughed coldly. If I were to possess a great humanity like you, that would be the greatest humiliation to me. June Moxie. June Moxie. G. Bowen roared. These people were heroes who guarded the pillar of heaven's mountains for the safety of the entire human race. Some of them hadn't even taken a step down the mountain for thousands of years. They dedicated their entire lives to the war for seizing the heavens, to the entire Xian continent. And you actually want to kill all of them just like that? I've never denied that they were heroes, nor did I deny the contributions they'd once made to this continent. June Mo, Sierra replied in a gloomy manner, but heroes also have to die. When heroes do something wrong, they have to pay the price. Don't think that just because you're a hero, others have to follow your lead. Let me tell you, in this world, no one owes you anything. My brothers, and I don't owe you anything either. Since you've caused the deaths of my brothers, you must pay the price. Not to mention heroes. Even if you're a saint, a savior, you'll have to pay a corresponding price for your actions. This is fairness. This is the justice that I'm going to seek. If the heavens don't give me justice, I'll seek it myself. If the earth doesn't give me justice, I'll fight for it myself. If you guys don't give me an explanation, I'll seek it myself. If there's no explanation for the human world, then just wait for destruction. Ha ha! June Moxie raised his head to the sky and laughed. Pointing his finger, he said, even if this beautiful world is destroyed, so what? In this universe, how many worlds like this are there? Who's right? Who's wrong? The principles here might not be the same as what other worlds view as treason and heresy. The justice here might be despicable things in other worlds. But the affection between brothers, no matter which world it is, will always be the same, eternal and unchanging. Just like you guys, just like us. June Moxie said heavily. Right now, we're enemies. Only one of us can live. If your brothers die, you'll be sad. If our brothers die, we'll also be sad. Joy alone is not as good as joy together. You make me sad. How can I not make you sad? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. No matter where it's placed, it's the truth. It's eternal. It's been a long time since I've asked for monthly votes. I've forgotten what it feels like. At 3:30 in the morning, I'll ask for a monthly vote. Chapter 1164. I originally didn't want to speak so much nonsense with you guys, but if I don't say it, I'll be unhappy. I'll talk about my pleasure and seeing you guys unhappy. That's the true pleasure. Only like this can my brothers in the netherworld go on their way peacefully. June Mo, Ciel laughed maniacally and roared. Perhaps this is the so-called cycle of the heavens. Retribution is unsatisfying. Xiachong Tian's face turned completely malevolent. There's no more hope. Everything is a foregone conclusion. This evil monarch will definitely not compromise. He's already said all sorts of good things, but this evil monarch is still unmoved. No, he's not unmoved at all. He was simply enjoying the extreme pleasure of revenge, watching her suffer, watching her heart wrench in pain, to enjoy her pain. Although the pit was deep, the flame of primal chaos had already fallen in. Even if it's moving slowly, it will eventually reach its destination. The death of those brothers is already a foregone conclusion. June Moxie, have you ever thought about what kind of price you'll have to pay if these brothers of mine really die? Xiachong Tian's face was contorted and a cruel light shone from his eyes. He was on the verge of losing control. Price? I've never thought about it. June Moxie's eyes narrowed. What kind of price do you think you can make me pay with just a few of you? If all my brothers die, then this old man can guarantee the lives of the Tian Fa Alliance army here. Xiachong Tian's voice was filled with killing intent. Not a single one of them will live. Jun Moxie's eyes narrowed. He looked at Xia Chong Tian and said slowly, word by word, "As long as you dare to behave atrociously, I'll accompany you to the end." He slowly raised his eyelids, and his sharp gaze swept across the battlefield. "Xia Chong Tian, if you dare to kill me today, I'll kill 100 of you. If you kill the 3 of us, I'll make the 3 holy lands go extinct. I'll wait for you, Xia Chong Tian. As long as you have the guts to make a move, I, Jun Moxie, will not be an easy target." The two of them stared at each other fiercely. Their gazes seemed to have created exceptionally intense sparks in the air. Xia Chong Tian's eyes were filled with grief, despair, and even a hint of hysteria. As for Jun Moxie, his eyes had been stimulated by Xia Chong Tian's words to the point of complete insanity. However, Xia Chong Tian's eyes still carried a trace of apprehension. Yes, he was still worried about the war for seizing the heavens. Worried about the entire world. If it was just the battle between him and Jun Moxie, it could be said that it was a battle of pride. It didn't affect the overall situation. This was also the biggest reason why Jun Moxie insisted on facing the 47 of them alone. Because the moment Mei Shuyin and the rest made a move, it would mean that the 3 holy lands, Tian Fa, and the evil monarch manor would completely fall out with each other. Jun Moxie also couldn't afford such a responsibility. Jun Moxie had a thought. If he and his brothers could not avoid death, then he would rather die fighting against the strange races than let them die in the hands of the 3 holy lands. Because it wasn't worth it. Xia Chong Tian's apprehension was even more complicated than Jun Moxie's. If he really fought with Jun Moxie today, and even implicated the 3 holy lands and Tian Fa forest, then there wouldn't even be a need to fight this battle against the strange races. They would definitely lose. Then he, Xia Chong Tian, would be the center of the entire human race. Xia Chong Tian had protected the continent for 3,000 years, and this responsibility had long seeped into the depths of his soul. This glory had long seeped into his bloodline. He valued honor and reputation above everything else. How could he bear the name of the center of the continent for no reason? Xia Chong Tian had apprehensions, but Jun Moxie didn't. Destruction of the continent? If it's destroyed, then let it be destroyed. In any case, the conflict between you 3 holy lands has nothing to do with me. Even if the continent is going to be destroyed because of this battle, I will not resign myself to death in your hands. At most, we'll be destroyed together. What's the big deal about that? If you don't want your life, then I can. Everyone only has one head, and no one has an extra egg. Trying to scare me? Threaten me? Your granny. Xia Chong Tian, didn't you promise? Why aren't you taking action? I'm waiting for you to take action. Jun Moxie looked at him coldly. Don't tell me that you only know how to promise with your mouth. Do you dare to make an oath? And kill over 10,000 of my brothers? Who do you think you are? Do you have the ability to do that? Where did you get the guts from? Xia Chong Tian finally went completely berserk. With a loud roar, he screamed, Jun Mo Xie, you're the one who forced me to do this. His gaze turned and landed on Mei Shuyin, Bear Mountain, and the rest who were watching from the other side. His eyes flashed with an ominous glint. Obviously, he would take action at any moment. Jun Moxie roared and his body disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he appeared again. But in that instant, his aura had already undergone an earth-shattering change. His aura was majestic and domineering. In the eyes of everyone, Jun Moxie's head reached the heavens, and his feet stepped on the ground. This body of his was the world itself. Jun Moxie took a step forward. Just one step. It was just one step. Punk. Ripples seemed to appear in the space between the heavens and the earth. At this moment, everyone could see that even the mountains had been distorted for a moment. It had turned into a strange shape. The space trembled, and the airflow became unstable. The entire world was warped. This was what caused everyone's eyes to see. Even in the eyes of Gu Han, Xia Chong Tian, and Jibo Wan, these experts were no exception. The entire world trembled violently. Guhan's face changed. Raising his head in horror, he looked at Jun Moxie, who was approaching Xia Chong Tian step by step. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Xia Chong Tian and Jibo One, the two Saint Monarchs, also had a change in expression. The two of them felt the boundless pressure of heaven and earth pressing down on them with this step of Jun Moxie's. All the energy of heaven and earth gathered at this spot. The two of them involuntarily took a step back, as the two of them had already mobilized all the profound energy in their bodies in order to resist against this sudden, terrifying pressure. This unconsciously retreating step actually caused a boom sound as it stomped a deep hole in the ground. Jun Moxie laughed coldly. Xia Chong Tian, I'll tell you the truth. Even without your earlier threat, you were destined to die today. You are the main culprit behind the deaths of my brothers. The reason why I spoke so much nonsense with you was to let you have a taste of your brothers dying in front of you. All right, don't say that this young master killed your brothers. The real culprit behind their deaths is you. It's them. It's because of your decisions that led to today's ending. Now, I believe you've had enough of this feeling, right? Come. Let this young master send you off. On the road to the Yellow Springs, remember, in your next life, don't make me unhappy. After fusing with the Hongjun Pagoda, the backlash was simply too severe, especially after using the flame of primal chaos. After fusing with the Hongjun Pagoda, fusing with it again was something that even Jun Moxie could not predict. But at the very least, his body and soul would be heavily injured. That was a fact that was set in stone. Now that the strange races were about to attack, Jun Moxie did not intend to be so ruthless. Not for himself, but because he was afraid that he would not be able to protect his brothers. They were all here because of a single order from him. How could Jun Moxie not be worried? How could he not take responsibility? How could he not be troubled? But Xia Chong Tian's threat had caused Jun Moxie to explode in anger. He actually dares to use my brothers to threaten me? If I don't kill him, I'll let down the heavens and earth, let down humanity, let down my brothers, and let down my own conscience. Then I'll kill him. His eyes shone with extreme madness as he roared. Then I'll destroy this world as well. Sword! Jun Moxie roared. The blood of yellow flame let out a sword cry and disappeared. In the next instant, it had already appeared in front of Jibo One. The sword's edge was cold and gleaming with a cold light. The sword light was unparalleled in the world. A single sword had actually blocked all the attacks of a Saint Monarch like Jibo One. One man and one sword, blocking two Saint Monarchs head-on in the most unyielding manner. The man was like the sword, and the sword was like the man. The same coldness, the same pride, the same sharpness. Xia Chong Tian chuckled coldly. Jun Mo Xia, this monarch is truly helpless against your underhanded tricks. But you actually want to face the two of us head-on with your strength alone? Should I laugh at your arrogance or overestimation of your capabilities? Jun Moxie, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Sneaky tricks can only be used for sneak attacks. In a head-on battle, you have to rely on your own abilities. Idiot! Jun Moxie had no intention of replying at all. With a thought, a 9 Netherfrost blade suddenly appeared in his hand. In an instant, this pitch-black 9 Netherfrost blade suddenly lit up. It emitted a breathtaking brilliance. It was a color darker than the darkness itself. It was as if a pure black flame had suddenly ignited in the air. Dark but glorious. Xia Chong Tian, I've already said it before. The main culprit behind the deaths of so many of my brothers is you. That's why I've gone through so much trouble to let you taste the pain of losing your brothers. Now that the foreplay is over, you can go and die now. Go and apologize to my brothers in the Yellow Springs. As soon as Jun Moxie finished speaking, he waved the blade in his hand, and a black light instantly filled the sky. His entire body seemed to have transformed into an awe-inspiring, sharp sword that could slice through the sky. Facing the Saint Monarch expert in front of him, he took the initiative to launch a brazen attack. On the other side, the peerless Divine Blade, the blood of yellow flame, also let out a shrill sword cry. Its light shone brightly, like a bolt of purple lightning streaking across the sky, piercing towards Jibo 1. In reality, this was actually a duel between two opponents. Jun Moxie and the Blood of Yellow Flame were two separate entities, each fighting on their own. There was no connection between them. But in the eyes of others, this scene was clearly a person controlling two swords. One wielding, the other manipulating. He was fighting against two Saint Monarchs at the same time. All the spectators sucked in a cold breath of air. Even the Tion Fa faction was no exception. This Jun Moxie was truly audacious. And Chapter 1165. Today's second chapter. I'll continue to work over time. On the other hand, the higher-ups of the three Holy Lands were also shocked but not too surprised. The day before, Jun Moxie had also used this method to fight the peak expert Jean Luan Hui alone, achieving a close combat result. Jean Luan Hui's strength was unfathomable and had already surpassed the limits of a human cultivator. Even the experts of Heaven's Saint Palace were unable to stop him. But Jun Moxie was actually able to stop him with his own strength, and even gained the upper hand in the beginning of the battle. This kind of shocking strength was truly enough to shock the world. And this was also the reason why Guhan had made the decision just now. Although Tion Fa had won a great battle, they had suffered heavy losses. 8 Saint Venerables had fallen, the Eagle King had been sacrificed, and they had lost 5,000 elites. Tion Fa's fighting strength was too great. Furthermore, the strength of the people in the war for seizing the Heavens Camp was extremely impressive, and they were truly on the same side. If Jun Mo Xie had not displayed such strength before, even if Guhan did not stand on Xiaochang Tian's side, he would only try to smooth things over and not make such a choice. Xiaochang Tian and Jibo, whose faces were filled with grief and indignation as they struck out at the same time. Both of them had the same thought in their hearts. Take down Jun Moxie as soon as possible. Only then would they be able to save their 40 brothers. The longer they took, the more dangerous the situation would be. The other 3 Saint Venerables and the 2 Holy Emperors who had managed to escape earlier stood at their original spots, not knowing what to do. They also wanted to join in the battle, but who should they fight against? Jun Moxie had already taken on everything by himself. Right now, he was using himself as a representative to seek justice, to take revenge and vent his anger. From start to end, no one else from Tion Fa spoke, although they knew that this was Jun Moxie's original intention. But they still could not make a move against Mei Shuyan and the rest. The moment they made a move, they would not be able to bear the consequences. They were not Saint Monarchs. They did not have that kind of status. In fact, even Xiaochang Tian might not dare to do so. He was just being ruthless earlier, but he didn't dare to really make a move against Tion Fa's people. It was not because of Jun Moxie's threat, but because of the bigger picture. The cause of this matter was because they had watched coldly from the sidelines and had no intention to help. In the end, it caused the Tion Fa Eagle and Bear Army to be almost completely annihilated. As the leader, Jun Moxie had stood up to seek justice, and it was only right and proper. No one had anything to say, and even Guhan could only try to smooth things over, but it was impossible for him to say anything. Even if Xiaochang Tian and his companion were die in this battle, they could only blame themselves. No one could say anything. However, if the others were to swarm up and attack Jun Moxie, the nature of the situation would be completely different. If that was the case, even Guhan would not allow it. Elder Gu, even if Saint Monarch Xia and the others didn't lend a hand, there's no need for us to fight to the death, right? Was Jun Moxie's reaction too extreme? He's completely ignoring the bigger picture. On the side of the 3 Holy Lands, an expert from the Holy Emperor cautiously said to Guhan. The meaning behind his words was extremely obvious. You can't say it like that. The one who spoke up this time was actually Mo Wudao. He sighed and said, "Not lending a hand this time may seem like a small matter, but in reality, it has far-reaching effects. Firstly, in the past 100 years, our 3 Holy Lands have been working together to suppress Tion Fa, almost causing them to be unable to recover. If not for the appearance of Jun Moxie, Tian Fa would probably have been consigned to eternal damnation by now. It could be said that it was us who had personally removed Tian Fa's position as an ally and ally. In fact, the relationship between us is already irreconcilable and irreconcilable. In the current situation, even if the Tian Fa beast did not come to this battlefield, no one can say anything. After all, even the strange races do not dare to enter their Tian Fa forest. In addition, they are not even humans, so no one has the right to condemn them. Mo Wu Dao said, but they still came, and they came resolutely. For the sake of the world, for the sake of the Xian continent, they abandoned their old enmity with us. This in itself is a righteous and benevolent act. This is the first. Mo Wu Dao and Tian Fa had many conflicts and enmity. He even had a grudge against Jun Moxie for killing his brother, and they could not live under the same sky. But this person did not lose the demeanor of a leader. When it came to such a big matter, his comments were objective and impartial, and he spoke with the truth. This point was commendable. Secondly, Gu Han continued coldly. The reason why Tian Fa came was because the three holy lands went to plead with them. To put it bluntly, it was because we did not care about our face, lowered our statuses, and gave up on our pride to ask for their help. From this point, no matter what Tian Fa's original intentions were, just from this point alone, the three holy lands are greatly indebted to them. From a strategic point of view, they are comrades in arms. From a deeper level, the situation this time can be said to be extremely grim. The Holy Lands do not have any chance of victory, and the danger of collapse is right in front of them. But Tian Fa's appearance is equivalent to saving the three Holy Lands. Xiachang Tian and the rest did not come to their aid. Not only did they destroy their own city, they also repaid kindness with enmity. Gu Han sighed. This was the other reason why he was not willing to step out to mediate. Gu Han was also extremely enraged by Xiachang Tian's actions. Furthermore, if he forcefully stepped out to stop them, Gu Han knew that his face in front of Jun Moxie was not that big. The moment he opened his mouth, the greatest possibility was that even the rest of them would be sacrificed. No one in the war for seizing the Heavens camp knew about Jun Moxie's strength, but how could he not know? More importantly, Jun Moxie was even more monstrous than that Zhang Quan. He was truly a person who could not be killed. If two countries are at war, and two allied armies are fighting on the battlefield, and one side falls into a desperate situation, while the other side watches coldly from the sidelines, not moving at all, this is a capital crime. The crime of treason. Mo Wu Dao laughed bitterly. It's equivalent to rebellion. This crime is unforgivable. So, no matter how you look at it, Saint Monarch Xia's actions this time are a grave mistake. From a smaller perspective, it's disregarding the greater good, ungrateful, and repaying kindness with enmity. Mo Wu Dao said, from a larger perspective, no matter who the person in charge of Tian Fa is, there is an 80% chance that both sides will fall out with each other. This kind of action is completely disregarding the safety of the world, playing with the fortune and misfortune of the common people. It can be said to be the most heinous crime, and it's extremely deranged. Gu Han sighed deeply. The Holy Emperor who asked the question couldn't help but be taken aback. Sect Lord Mo, why are you? Mo Wu Dao laughed bitterly and said, indeed, I've never had a good impression of Tian Fa, the evil monarch manner, or even Jun Moxie himself. This is the truth. Be it before or in the future, I will still maintain my stand against Tian Fa. But, in the face of such a major issue, I, Mo Wu Dao, will not go so far as to block out the greater good with my personal feelings. We dealt with Tian Fa because we were certain that the strange races did not have the ability to invade, and we had full confidence in winning the war for seizing the heavens. Even if we completely annihilate Tian Fa, that's an internal matter of the continent. But if the strange races were powerful, I would not have started a civil war no matter what. He sighed deeply and said, if I had known about today's matter, then I would have fixed my relationship with Tian Fa at all costs. At the very least, I would have ensured the victory of this battle before anything else. I definitely would not have given the order to deal with Tian Fa. Things change with the passage of time. It's truly a dazzling sight. Who would have thought that the pillar of heaven's mountains that had stood for 10,000 years would collapse at this critical moment? Shi Ruo Chun let out a long sigh and cursed through gritted teeth. Damn that Zhang Luanhui. Damn Zhang Kuang. Then, are we really just going to stand by and watch the battle between Saint Monarch Xia and Jun Moxie? And the lives of those 40 brothers? Are we just going to abandon them? That holy emperor asked unwillingly. This is the price that Jun Moxie wants to exact. And Jun Moxie also has the ability to do so. We can only watch, especially in this delicate situation where a slight move in one part could affect the entire situation as a whole. We can't move. Acting rashly will only cause more trouble. Guhan's eyes flashed with sorrow. Today's karma is yesterday's cause. Reaping what we sowed, who can we blame? Are we still going to insist on distorting the truth and start a war with Tian Fa and the evil monarch manor? And let the strange races reap the benefits? Chu Hui happened to be standing behind Guhan, and he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Suddenly, Guhan's eyes narrowed, and he turned pale with fright. Oh no, looks like I've still underestimated Jun Moxie's true strength. Perhaps it's not just those 40 brothers. Even Xia Chong Tian will be facing a calamity. Speaking up to this point, even Guhan himself was stunned by his own words and the truth before his eyes. Jun Moxie actually possessed such terrifying, heaven-defying strength? Everyone was shocked, and they all turned to look. With a single glance, everyone's jaws dropped, unable to close. Before the battle, everyone had guessed how this battle would turn out, but they never imagined that it would turn out like this. Jun Moxie was the evil monarch, and his cultivation was extraordinary. He even had the battle record of crushing Zhang Luanhui's spirit. But in the end, he was still a rising star of the younger generation. Although his cultivation speed was already shocking, he was still stuck at the Saint Venerable realm. It seemed like he hadn't broken through to the Saint Monarch realm yet. But Xia Chong Tian was a true Saint Monarch, and a third-level one. So everyone thought that Xia Chong Tian would have the upper hand in the battle. Even Guhan thought so. Then as long as the battle reached a certain stage, and the victor was clear, Guhan would step out to mediate, and the matter would be left unsettled. But as the battle continued, Xia Chong Tian was actually at an absolute disadvantage. An irreversible decline. This kind of situation was something that no one had ever dreamt of. In that moment, everyone was completely dumbfounded. Jun Moxie let out a long cry, and his movements were as swift as the wind. The black blade was like the wind, and it was extremely strange. His xianqi was like a tidal wave, surging endlessly. That slender, 9 nether frost blade actually formed a black cloud in the air. Heaven and earth turned dark. Chapter 1166. The moment Xia Chong Tian clashed, he fell into a state of bitter struggle. Although his movements and techniques were not messed up, he could only passively counter every single move. He had no way to retaliate at all. Saint Monarch Xia's face had already turned the color of a pig's liver. Such a strong sense of humiliation filled his entire heart. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Jun Moxie's strength could actually reach such a level. From the start, he had only been blocking, and blocking. He actually did not attack even once. As the saying goes, the first drumbeat of energy, the second will weaken, and the third will weaken. This was the logic of a battle formation. But Jun Moxie's attacks did not weaken at all. More and more ferocious, more and more violent. How did things develop to such a state? Not to mention Guhan and the rest. Even Xia Chong Tian himself was confused. He was a Saint Monarch expert, and although Jun Moxie's strength was not weak, he was clearly only at the Saint Venerable realm. He was clearly much weaker than him. But how did the situation turn out like this? Right now, Xia Chong Tian only felt as if he had fallen into a huge swamp. The more he struggled, the faster he fell. Right now, he was practically on the brink of death. He only remembered that when Jun Moxie's sword pierced over, he had wanted to block the attack and quickly take down this arrogant brat so that he could save his brother. But the opponent's seemingly simple sword had actually enveloped a radius of several zhang. If he retreated, he would naturally be safe. But facing a junior, if he retreated the moment they clashed, where would the prestige of Saint Monarch go? Thus, Xiaochang Tian decided not to retreat. But because of this, he was unable to take advantage of the situation to counterattack. The opponent's attack was filled with a pitch-black sword light. It was clearly not something that his body could withstand. Thus, he dodged it. Before he had even finished dodging, the next sword had already arrived at his throat. Xiaochang Tian was taken aback as he twisted his body to the side. Yet another sword had arrived in front of his heart. Xiaochang Tian sucked in his stomach and straightened his body, jumping up like a puppet. Just as he was about to strike, the sword light had already arrived at his dantian. Just like that, Jun Mo Xie dodged and retreated step by step. It had only been 2 breaths of time since the start of the battle, but Jun Mo Xie had already attacked 365 times. Every strike was accompanied by a sharp sword light. As for Xiaochang Tian, he had dodged 365 times. Each time was more difficult than the last, and each time was more embarrassing than the last. But he didn't even have time to counterattack. Dodging time and time again, Xiaochang Tian realized that even if he wanted to fight with his life on the line, he no longer had the chance. If he wanted to cause damage to the other party, the only way was to self-destruct. The battle-hardened Xiaochang Tian suddenly felt a wave of sorrow in his heart. How could the result be like this? How could he, who had been through hundreds of battles and had never admitted defeat, be forced into such a state by such a young man? Could it be that he was in a nightmare? However, even if it was a nightmare, it didn't seem to be such a ridiculous thing. Jun Moxie's face was like iron, his eyes like ice, emotionless and cold. Sword after sword pierced out without the slightest bit of mercy. After completely merging with the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie's battle prowess had already risen to the level of a half-sage like Zhang Luanhui. Against this Xiaochang Tian, who was only a 3rd-level Saint Monarch, he was filled with confidence. Because of this, he was able to force Xiaochang Tian into an absolute disadvantage the moment the battle began. He didn't give him any chance to catch his breath. The more Xiaochang Tian fought, the crazier he became. The more he fought, the more depressed he felt. The more he fought, the more he felt like he had lost all his face. Just a single wrong decision had pushed him and his brothers into the abyss of eternal damnation. First, he was humiliated in front of everyone, then questioned in front of everyone. Then, he had to watch helplessly as his brothers who had been with him for countless years fell into a dangerous situation where they could die any moment. He was completely helpless and helpless. And then, he was forced into such an awkward and dangerous situation. Looking at Jun Moxie's cold face and those eyes that were filled with hatred and pleasure, Xiaochang Tian finally understood Jun Moxie's true method of revenge. First, he let him taste the helplessness of his brothers in a hopeless situation, and then he was humiliated and toyed with by his opponent, like a cat playing with a mouse. "You're so vicious." Xiaochang Tian dodged and hollered. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was as malevolent as a ghost's. The golden crown on his head was sliced off with a loud bang, and his thick black hair fell down. Drops of blood flowed down his face and onto the ground. "Xiaochang Tian, because of you, I've lost so many good brothers. Then, I will naturally make you watch as your brothers die in front of you. You're destined to savor this kind of wonderful taste before you die. Even if you don't want to savor it, you have no choice." Jun Moxie did not relax at all. He charged forward again, and his dark blades were like black clouds, like a black waterfall, falling from the sky. His voice was like ice beads, chilling to the bone. "Xiaochang Tian, do you feel very guilty? Do you feel that you're useless? Do you feel the pain in your heart? Do you regret what you did? Junimo Xie let out a long howl, and the dark blade slashed out 99 times like a hurricane. Countless black sword rays that were several zhang long, mixed with a black mist, crisscrossed and covered the entire area. At the same time, his left hand pressed down fiercely. Flame of primal chaos. Press down for me. The flame of primal chaos, which had already descended a great distance from the pit, suddenly began to descend even faster. Facing those despairing gazes, it mercilessly burned down. The blood-curdling screams that could shake one's heart suddenly rang out. Even the people in the camp thousands of feet away felt their hair stand on end when they heard that mournful cry. That's right, Jun Moxie had been controlling it from the start. He did not allow the flame of primal chaos to complete its mission so quickly, because the revenge he wanted had not been completed yet. Cutting flesh with a blunt knife, that was the most torturous thing. The flame of primal chaos descended, turning everything into ashes. With a single slash, Xiao Chong Tian's head was separated from his body. Everything happened in an instant, very quickly. But did it feel good? Did it feel like revenge? Not good. Death was not scary. What was scary was knowing that death was right in front of your eyes, but it did not fall. That kind of feeling of waiting for death was the most terrifying. Just like how some men of steel did not fear anything, not even death. But they were most afraid of others torturing their family and friends in front of them. And what Xia Chong Tian cared about the most was not his own life. Destroying what the enemy cared about the most, and then destroying his life, was the true destruction. From the moment Jun Moxie planned to take revenge, he had already made up his mind. Causing the death of my brothers, and you want to die a quick death? Wishful thinking. Otherwise, although the flame of primal chaos's speed was slow, it should not be to this extent. Death was not that scary. Only the torment of waiting for death was the greatest torture. Just like Xia Chong Tian, he could only watch helplessly as his brothers approached death, waiting for him to save them, but he was powerless to do anything. All of this was because of him. Xia Chong Tian was the one who was suffering the most. The one who was suffering the most. And Jun Mo Xie wanted to let him taste this kind of pain in its fullest. Hearing the inhuman screams, Xia Chong Tian's heart felt like it was being sliced by knives, his eyes red. Facing Jun Mo Xie's incisive response, he no longer dodged. Instead, he roared in a shrill voice. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. This matter was instigated by me alone. Jun Mo Xie, if you have any tricks up your sleeves, you can come at me. Don't torture my brothers. Don't continue. Are you in pain? Xia Chong Tian, all of this is because of you. Jun Mo Xie's sword was like the wind, and the 9 nether frost blades slashed out repeatedly. Xia Chong Tian's body was suddenly shrouded in a red mist, and in the next instant, countless thin streams of blood spurted out from various parts of his body. Even if this matter started because of me, my brothers are all innocent. Xia Chong Tian's body was covered in blood as he glared at Jun Moxie fiercely. Jun Moxie, as long as you're willing to let them go, I'll give up resisting and let you do as you please. Ha ha ha. Jun Moxie roared with laughter. If you'd said that before the battle, I might have admired your courage to admit to your actions, and on account of our brotherhood, I would have killed you to end this matter. But now that you're saying such words, it will only make me look down on you. Don't you still think that you still have a bargaining chip to bargain with? Could it be that if you don't let me do as I please, I won't be able to deal with you? Xia Chong Tian finally went completely crazy when he heard that. At this moment, the last bit of pride he had was ruthlessly tossed aside by the other party. Trample. Jun Moxie, since you're so overbearing, then follow me to hell. Even if my brothers and I have to die, I'll drag you down with me. Go to hell. His aura congealed, and the entire space seemed to freeze at this moment. Then, the heaven and earth suddenly went berserk. Vast amounts of heaven, earth, yuan qi, at this moment, frantically poured into his body from all directions from the heavens and the earth. After a huge battle, countless experts had self-destructed, and the heaven-earth essence she here was already in an unbalanced and berserk state. Most experts would have to be extremely careful when adjusting their breathing here, afraid that the chaotic qi would enter their body and mess up their internal energy. But Xia Chong Tian was actually swallowing it all without a care. Regardless of whether it was useful or harmful, he absorbed it all into his body, into his meridians. From this moment onwards, everything was already irreversible. When Guhan saw such a change, he instantly understood what would happen next. Pale with fright, he immediately shouted, "Everyone, retreat quickly!" Following his order, everyone from the 3 holy lands retreated rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they had already retreated several hundred zhang away. Everyone had a heavy expression on their faces. As for Tian Fa's side, although they were worried about Jun Moxie, they also retreated several hundred zhang away under Mei Shuyan's strict orders. Everyone stared fixedly at the changes in the battlefield. Their eyes were filled with joy, but there was also some worry. After all, the opponent was a Saint Monarch level expert. If he wanted to fight to the death, he might even self-destruct. Even if Jun Moxie's strength and movement techniques were shocking, he might not be able to escape unscathed. Only Mei Shuyan was not worried about Jun Moxie's safety at all. Jun Moxie had the Hongjun Pagoda with him. Even if this world exploded, he would still be safe and sound. When the Tian Fa kings, Bear Mountain, and the rest saw that Mei Shuyan was not worried at all, they naturally guessed that this powerful brother-in-law of theirs would definitely have a way to protect himself. Thus, they all relaxed. In the battlefield, Xia Chong Tian laughed sinisterly as he stared fixedly at Jun Moxie. The aura of his Xian Qi continued to rise. He broke through to the 3rd level of Saint Monarch, then slowly pushed to the peak of the 3rd level of Saint Monarch, and continued to break through. It only stopped when he reached the peak of the 4th level of Saint Venerable. Under such a strong suction force, even the wind in the sky seemed to have stopped blowing. The countless wounds on Xia Chong Tian's body that had been pierced by Jun Moxie had strangely stopped bleeding. That skinny body of his actually started to swell up slowly, turning into the shape of a ball, floating in the air. Second brother Xia, Dona. On the other side, Jibo was already in a fluster under the blood of Yellow Flame's chaotic yet miraculous attacks. He could only defend himself, and did not have the strength to retaliate. The blood of Yellow Flame could even restrain Zhang Luan Hui completely. Against a 2nd-level Saint Monarch like Jibo, it was naturally even easier. But Jibo was ultimately a Saint Monarch expert. Although his methods were poor, he was still able to defend. It was impossible for him to defeat the blood of Yellow Flame, but it was also difficult for the blood of Yellow Flame to kill him. Both sides fell into an uneven stalemate. But right now, Xia Chong Tian was already at the point of no return. He wanted to go all out and drag Jun Moxie down with him. How could Jibo not sense it? The moment he saw the situation, he roared with rage. Disregarding his own safety, he forcefully charged forward, hoping to break through the blood of Yellow Flame's blockade and stop Xia Chong Tian from using his extreme methods. Unfortunately, no matter how anxious he was, no matter how forceful he was unable to break through the blood of Yellow Flame's blockade. He tried again and again, but it was all defused by the blood of Yellow Flame, forcing him to retreat step by step. After a few more breaths, Xia Chong Tian's aura finally reached its peak. Right now, he was completely crazy, and he no longer cared about anything in the world. The miserable screams of his brothers that rose and fell in his ears had long ago caused him to lose all reason. At this time, the screams from the pit were getting weaker and weaker. But no matter how soft, it was like Xia Chong Tian's heart was being slashed again and again by a bloody knife. Right now, Xia Chong Tian no longer wanted to continue living in this world. Such humiliation, such a huge enmity, if he couldn't wash it away, how could he have the face to continue living? Only death. Xia Chong Tian laughed maniacally, almost hysterically. His eyes unknowingly welled up with tears. This was the first time this saint monarch had shed tears in over 3,000 years. There was regret, there was hatred, there was despair, and his heart was like dead ashes. Jun Moxie, come with me. Jun Moxie's eyes were fixed on him, watching all the changes in him. Gritting his teeth, he said viciously, Xiaochang Tian, this is your ending. It's because you didn't save them that caused countless of my Tian Fa brothers to die. Today, I will kill all your brothers. You made my brothers self-detonate, so I will force you to self-detonate as well. Blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. This was Jun Moxie's usual method. Jun Mo's vengeance had always been this straightforward and direct. Xiaochang Tian finally understood. So his final counterattack, self-detonation, was actually part of the enemy's plan. And the enemy's goal was to force him to self-detonate. This kind of aggrieved feeling of being a puppet on strings, being toyed with by others, made Xiaochang Tian wish he could die immediately. The wails and groans in the pit had completely disappeared. Xiaochang Tian's heart was filled with an endless emptiness. He clearly understood that his brothers had completely evaporated from this world. Perhaps there really wasn't a single trace of them left behind. Xiaochang Tian had finally lost his last bit of hope. Right now, he was the same as Bear Mountain's reaction when Eagle King died. A fate worse than death. But the meaning behind it was completely different. There was an almost essential difference. Bear King's brothers had died heroically in battle to save their elder brother, leaving their names in the annals of history. On the other hand, Xiaochang Tian's brothers had died because of Xiaochang Tian, destined to go down in history. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. At this moment, Bear Mountain couldn't help but think of his brothers. Other than guilt, there was also pride and nostalgia. But Xiaochang Tian was different. Other than guilt, there's only guilt, only guilt. Even in the netherworld, Xiaochang Tian felt that he did not have the face to see his old brothers. Xiaochang Tian had completely broken down. Jun Moxie, this old man regrets. This old man regrets not killing your beast brothers with my own hands. This old man hates. Xiaochang Tian screamed hysterically. Killing my brothers with my own hands? You're not worthy. Xiaochang Tian, at least my brothers died heroically for the sake of the world. As for your death, what does it count for? Even if you died 10,000 times, it cannot compare to a single brother of mine. You are the shame of the Xian continent, the source of all the killing, the center of humanity, the traitor of the continent, a complete and utter bastard, a pile of trash. Xiaochang Tian screamed madly. 1,000 sins, all of them are on me. But on this road to the Yellow Springs, I'll have you to accompany me. Jun Moxie, let's die together. Rumble. An enormous explosion resounded, and an extremely dazzling white light erupted. Following this shrill cry, the Saint Monarch Xiaochang Tian finally unleashed his final counterattack of self-detonation. The violent explosion tore a huge hole through the thick clouds formed by the volcanic eruption. At this moment, the clear blue sky could be seen. Then, another huge mushroom cloud rose up, covering the blue sky that had just appeared behind the dark clouds. Immediately after, a large pit with a radius of nearly 2,000 feet appeared on the ground. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. In the distance, the Tian Fa warriors and a portion of the weaker cultivators from the Three Holy Lands had actually fainted from the impact. Thousands of tents flew away in the sky like white clouds, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. The earth shook violently. Sweat. I've finally finished writing this chapter. I'm probably going to receive a lot of scolding, calling me a pervert. That was how he had planned his revenge from the start. But in the end, he still couldn't stop writing, and it seemed a little overboard, but so be it. Chapter 1167. First update of the day. Sorry for being late. Continuing to work overtime. The final explosion. Dust and sand flew everywhere, and a huge crater had appeared in the middle of the explosion. The size of the crater was extremely shocking, almost as big as the crater that Jun Moxie had created with his power of earth. Xia Chong Tian, who had self-detonated, had naturally turned into dust. He couldn't be any more dead, and not even his holy infant or soul was left behind. But Jun Moxie, who had been at the center of the explosion, had also disappeared without a trace. Could it be that this brat had perished together with Xia Chong Tian? The faces of Guhan and the rest were extremely heavy, and their expressions were extremely complicated. If the two of them had really perished together, then this matter would really be huge. Right now, the hearts of the people from the three holy lands could be said to be extremely strange. No one was mourning Xia Chong Tian's death. Instead, they were all praying that nothing would happen to their greatest enemy, Jun Moxie. Even Mo Wudao, who had originally hoped for Jun Moxie's death the most, was also praying from the bottom of his heart. Jun Moxie, please don't die. Right now, the strength of the continent really could not afford to lose anymore. And the most important thing was that if Jun Moxie became a scapegoat for Xia Chong Tian, not only would Tian Fa not continue to help them fight against the outsiders, these Xian beasts would also go crazy and destroy all traces of the three holy lands. There was no doubt about this. All the experts present stared blankly at the scene in front of them, as if they had been struck by lightning. A total of 40 experts and a Saint Monarch expert had been annihilated in such a short period of time. The cause of all this was the work of a single person. If Jun Moxie did not die with them, then this result would be too terrifying. Second brother Xia Ji Bowen was shocked to see Xia Chong Tian's self-detonation, and he cried out in grief and indignation. When Xia Chong Tian self-detonated, Ji Bowen had taken a few blows at the last moment and managed to escape. And the blood of Yellow Flame was naturally not willing to let him go. It also chased after him, sword after sword. Ji Bowen witnessed the death of his close friend and was flustered. He was actually injured one after another. But at this moment, he was only shouting wildly, not caring about the injuries on his body. Suddenly, Ji Bowen's entire body shot up like an arrow into the sky, laughing bitterly as he leapt into the air. The blood of Yellow Flame also let out an abnormally shrill sword cry. After a few swings, the sword light flashed and blood splattered like rain in the sky. An arm fell from the sky with a kacha sound. Ji Bowen was in so much pain that he suddenly raised his head in midair and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood immediately turned into a blood mist that filled the sky, but his flying body still maintained a straight posture as he advanced at full speed. The blood of Yellow Flame buzzed as it chased after him. A moment of carelessness had actually allowed that fellow to escape. The blood of Yellow Flame felt that they had lost a lot of face, and they were a little angry out of humiliation. To embarrass a kid who thought he was very capable and had a lot of face, it seemed like the price he had to pay would be very terrifying. Ji Bowen roared with laughter and suddenly used all the strength in his body to roar. Jun Moxie, since you're so inhumane, then this old man will make you regret it for the rest of your life. The things that second brother Xia hasn't finished, let me finish them. Before his voice even landed, his body suddenly twisted in a way that defied the laws of physics. Originally, he was charging straight into the sky, but now he was falling diagonally. His momentum was as sharp as the wind, and his speed was as fast as lightning. In just a flash, he actually left behind hundreds of afterimages in the sky. With a hoo sound, he charged towards Mei Shuiyin, who was on the ground. Ji Bowen laughed maniacally as he gathered all the strength in his remaining arm. His eyes glowed with an extremely malevolent light as he slapped down towards Mei Shuiyin's head. This palm was the accumulation of a second-grade Saint Monarch's entire life's worth of cultivation. When this palm was released, the space within a radius of 100 zhang with the palm as the center instantly froze. It was as if it had turned into a huge piece of metal. In this space, even the wind and air could no longer flow. Mei Shuiyin's hair that was floating in the air suddenly froze. Bear Mountain's mouth was wide open, his face filled with anger as if he was about to curse out loud. But at this moment, he also froze. It was as if time and space had turned solid at this moment. Ji Bowen laughed maniacally, filled with the thrill of revenge. He wanted revenge. Revenge on Jun Moxie. And the best way to take revenge was to kill the person that Jun Moxie cared about the most, the person that he loved the most. He had already decided that as long as he could kill Mei Shuyan and take one look at Jun Moxie's sorrowful expression, he would immediately self-detonate. Just to be able to see Jun Mo Xie's heartbroken expression, Ji Bo was already satisfied. There was nothing else he wanted. Everything was worth it. You want us brothers to suffer so much that living is worse than death. Then I will let you live in agony for the rest of your life, in remorse, for all eternity. When he thought of this, Ji Bo laughed heartily. Yes, everyone only has one life. But when it's time to give it up, we will not be stingy. At such a close distance, none of the Tian Fashian beasts or the higher-ups of the evil monarch manor will be able to survive the self-detonation. He knew that Jun Moxie was not dead. Jun Moxie was definitely not dead, because that damnable demonic sword was still chasing after him crazily. This sword was undoubtedly under Jun Moxie's control. Since the sword was still flying, then Jun Moxie was definitely not dead. In other words, Xiaochang Tian's self-detonation had no effect on Jun Moxie at all. This fact caused Ji Bo to be enraged. Jun Moxie, how can you not die? How can you not die? You deserve to die, ah? You are the one who deserves to die the most. So Ji Bo immediately chose this path of revenge. The resolute path of revenge. Kill Mei Shuyan as long as Mei Shuyan died. Even if Jun Moxie did not die in the end, he would have to face a life worse than death. Kill. Kill. A distance of 100 zhang was crossed by Ji Bo in an instant. The space in front of his palm suddenly collapsed, forming a gigantic palm print that descended from the sky. That was the ultimate power of a second-level Saint Monarch, an all-out attack, an unstoppable attack of death. However, unstoppable did not mean that it was unstoppable. At that critical moment, Mei Shuyan, who was supposed to be locked in the confinement space, let out a loud roar. All the power in her body suddenly exploded, and the whole space immediately emitted cracking sounds. Her beautiful hair fluttered once again, and she raised her jade-like hand, ready to counterattack. In that instant, the people from the three holy lands could not believe what they were seeing. Mei Shuyan was actually able to break free from the space sealed by a Saint Monarch's lifetime of strength, and even able to counterattack. Then what kind of shocking cultivation did this Tian Fa Emperor have? Didn't he always call her Venerable Mei? Why was there such an inconceivable and incomprehensible phenomenon? But Mei Shuyan did not counterattack in the end. It was not that she could not make a move, but there was no need. There was no need, because a figure had appeared strangely in front of Mei Shuyan, blocking Ji Bowen's path. With this person in front of Mei Shuyan was confident that there was no power in the world that could break through this person and harm her. That was what she believed. Along with the appearance of that person, dozens of black sword shadows flashed and disappeared at lightning speed. A pair of palms appeared out of thin air. In an instant, the space was filled with a dense purple mist. The mystical purple mist rose densely, and it seemed to be filled with the most mysterious Tao in the universe. When Gu Han saw this purple mist, his expression changed greatly. Within this purple mist, there was clearly an unlimited amount of opportunities. If he wanted to break through and advance, this would most likely be the most crucial point. After that, this pair of palms met Ji Bowen's enormous palm print condensed from profound energy head-on. It was as if a towering mountain had suddenly appeared in front of a raging torrent. Heavenly lightning collided with earthly fire, a deafening sound like the collision of the sun and moon. To be able to make Mei Shuyan so confident, to be able to possess such a miraculous ability, there was only one person. Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie's face was cold, and his eyes were filled with an almost hysterical rage. When his lover's life was in danger, he suddenly appeared out of thin air, not taking a single step back, and clashed head-on with his Saint Monarch. Jibo when howled miserably, and before his body even landed on the ground, he was already sent flying. Dozens of blood arrows shot out from his front and back. Those dozens of black sword shadows were a total of 49 netherfrost blades, and at this moment they pierced through his body. Then Jun Moxie's palms, which were filled with primordial purple chi, slammed down viciously. Under such a tyrannical and terrifying impact, Jibo was like a 3-year-old child who had suddenly been rammed by a stampeding bull. His arms and legs flailed as he was sent flying. Blood spurted out from his mouth like a fountain, flying tens of zhong into the air. Jun Moxie's face also flushed red, and he stumbled backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His back knocked into Mei Shuyan, and only then did he finally stop, and he fell weakly onto the ground. Jibo was ultimately a Saint Monarch, and even if Jun Moxie could obtain a complete victory, it didn't mean that he didn't have to pay a price. In truth, Jun Moxie had fought 2 Saint Monarchs consecutively, and the Hongjun Pagoda's energy that he had borrowed previously had already been completely used up. His meridians were in a state of chaos, and his internal and external injuries could no longer be suppressed, and he finally couldn't hold on any longer. But Jun Moxie's eyes were still fixed on Jibo. If Jibo could still move, then even if his soul was destroyed, he would fuse with the Hongjun Pagoda again. He would definitely grind this bastard's bones into dust. With a light cry, the blood of yellow flame that came from Jibo's back did not slow down at all, and mercilessly pierced into Jibo's back. Then it stopped there. The blood of yellow flame that was flying at the speed of light should have completely pierced through Jibo's body without any obstruction, because Jibo's body could be said to be completely defenseless, and even the 9 nether frost blade that was far inferior to the blood of yellow flame could still pierce through it, let alone the blood of yellow flame that was countless times sharper than the 9 nether frost blade. But the truth was just this mysterious, this inconceivable. Chapter 1168. The second update has arrived. Continue to struggle, Jibo howled in rage. He breathed with all his might, opening his mouth and sucking in with all his might. The spiritual chi between heaven and earth, which was already abnormally chaotic, was now converging towards his mouth like 100 rivers converging into the sea. After Xia Chong Tian, the Saint Monarch, self-detonated, another Saint Monarch expert was about to unleash his ultimate move that would bring the enemy down with him. Actually, if Jibo chose to self-destruct, then his holy infant soul would definitely be able to escape. Even though his internal organs were all heavily injured and shattered by Jun Moxie's primal chaos purple chi, even his body had been turned into a transparent sieve by the 49 nether frost blades. There was even the blood of yellow flame sticking out of his body. But a Saint Monarch was still a Saint Monarch. As long as he was willing to self-destruct and escape, then even the blood of yellow flame wouldn't be able to stop him. The only one who could stop him was Jun Moxie. But right now, Jun Daxiao's internal and external injuries had all erupted. If he really wanted to escape, Daxiao might not take the risk to stop him. As for Mei Shuyan, although she had the strength to fight against him, she was still helpless against a mysterious existence like the Holy Infant. But right now, Jibo didn't want to leave at all. Or rather, he didn't want to live anymore. After seeing his 40 brothers turn into green smoke and seeing his close friend Xia Chong Tian self-destruct, Jibo no longer had anything left to live for. His only wish was revenge. Jun Moxie, your brothers cannot die for nothing. Could it be that my brothers should die in your hands for nothing? If I don't make you pay a corresponding price, I will not rest. Right now, he was right in the middle of Tian Fa and the evil Monarch Manor's camp. As long as he self-destructed, With Jun Moxie's weak and feeble state, even he wouldn't be able to escape. As long as he self-destructed, even he wouldn't be able to escape. Since he didn't want to live anymore, he might as well drag these people down with him before he died. It could be considered as revenge. What justice, what future of the continent, what peace of mankind, all of it could go to hell. Heaven and earth Yuan Qi crazily surged into his body from all directions. Ji Bo Wen laughed maniacally as he sensed the disordered spiritual qi of different attributes rushing into his body faster and faster. He was laughing with satisfaction, laughing with joy. To be able to have so many enemies accompany him on his journey, and to have his revenge, how could he not be satisfied? The spiritual qi gathered faster and faster. In the end, there was even a whooshing sound. In the sky, there was still a continuous stream of spiritual qi that converged into a light green stream, flashing past. The area Ji Bo Wen was in had turned into a huge conical funnel. Spirit qi swirled in the sky and rushed downwards. Ji Bo Wen laughed maniacally. Second brother Xia, wait for me. Brother, I'm coming to accompany you. Not only me, but I will also bring that goddamn Jun Moxie and those beasts with me to look for you. At that time, you could do whatever you want. Ha ha. In the midst of his maniacal laughter, Ji Bo Wen's laughter suddenly stopped. He widened his eyes in disbelief and screamed in horror. How could this be? How could this be? His voice was filled with fear and panic, as if he had lost control. Because with such a terrifying amount of heaven and earthling qi entering his body, the amount he had obtained was at least twice of what Xia Chong Tian could have obtained. But his body still did not show any signs of change. There were no signs of swelling, and even his meridians did not feel the slightest bit full. The wounds on his body were still dripping with fresh blood. Everything was the same as before. What's going on? What's going on? Ji Bo Wen frantically inspected his body. He could only feel his life force flowing out of his body, but he did not find a single strand of Ling Qi in his meridians. Where did all the Ling Qi he had just obtained go? He suddenly roared, "What's going on? How could this be?" Everything was out of control. Not only was the situation out of control, even the Ling Qi that he was so familiar with could not be used. He had completely lost control. What's going on? How could this be? The blood of yellow flame was stuck in Ji Bo Wen's body, glowing with a faint green light. With this fellow stuck in Ji Bo Wen's body and blocking his meridians, how could he dream of self-detonating? To think that he could drag so many people down with him was even more unrealistic than a dream. The blood of yellow flame had been starving for a long time these few days. He had never had the chance to drink the blood of an expert. The last time he met Zhang Luanhui, it could be said to be a top-grade delicacy. But it was a pity that the delicacy had disappeared. But this time, it had burrowed into the body of a saint monarch. It could be considered as making up for it. The blood of yellow flame was about to go crazy with joy. Although this fellow was not as good as that old fellow from before, he was still a top-grade tonic. Especially the fact that this fellow did not even think of escaping. This filled the blood of yellow flame with an indescribable sense of goodwill. What a good person, letting me absorb without moving at all. Where else in the world could I find another saint monarch expert as obedient and kind-hearted as him? So the blood of yellow flame was truly treasured. In fact, it was even a little stingy, carefully absorbing inch by inch, afraid that this kind-hearted fellow would discover it and disintegrate it. Then it would be too late for regrets, just as he was rejoicing in his heart that he had made a fortune, an even greater benefit suddenly arrived. This huge benefit was like a huge meat pie falling from the sky, smashing right onto the blood of yellow flame's head, smashing until it was dizzy and overjoyed. F***, this feels so good. It feels so good, ah. I've seen people who know how to adapt to circumstances, but I've never seen someone as sensible as this. Old fellow, this sword loves you to death. This fellow really knows how to do things. This fellow actually opened the heaven and earth bridge at this time and started absorbing the Ling Qi of heaven and earth crazily. The blood of yellow flame almost started cheering crazily in Jibo Wen's body. Too cool. Really too cool. This is truly what it means to get what you want. Heaven was really fulfilling his wishes. When he was thinking of a wife, two naked girls came to him. Not only did they send them over, they even sent them as gifts. Moreover, they did not resist at all and cooperated with him in a manner that allowed him to do whatever he wanted. Jibo Wen's self-detonation that he had been preparing for a long time was not ruined at all, and all benefited the blood of yellow flame. No matter how much heaven-earth spiritual chi was channeled into his body, the blood of yellow flame maintained a steady state of devouring, not wasting a single bit. Right now, Jibo Wen, this tragic saint monarch, had completely become a medium for the blood of yellow flame to communicate with the heaven-earth spiritual chi. Under the cooperation of the blood of yellow flame and Jibo Wen, the heaven-earthling chi seemed to have gone berserk, surging forth in waves, surging over in a grandiose manner. This was the remnant essence left behind by the deaths of over 200,000 strange races, as well as the chaotic Ling Qi from the self-detonation of thousands of Tian Fa warriors and tens of peak experts. The total amount of energy was an indescribably terrifying number. Originally, this was an energy that no living being could obtain and would only return to heaven and earth with the passing of time. But today, under this lucky coincidence, it had created a great opportunity for the blood of yellow flame. In this world, other than Jun Moxie, no one else would have known or imagined that such a sword existed. A Xian technique that could absorb one's blood essence. A demonic sword that could kill souls and lives and increase its own strength. The origin of such a miraculous ability was completely the result of Jun Moxie's continuous experimentation when he first obtained the power of gold. Jun Dashao would take out the blood of yellow flame to refine whenever he had the time. Every time he saw a good material, he would refine it again. Normally, no matter how many times a sword was refined, it would only take 2 or 3 times before it was completely formed. But Jun Moxie had refined the blood of yellow flame thousands of times. He did not care about the price, and kept on using different methods to refine it. Finally, it gave birth to an unparalleled freak in this world. For experts who had the intention to self-destruct, what was a sword in their body? Any expert who had the ability to self-destruct would be able to unleash a force that could destroy mountains. What was a mere sword to them? Even if it was made of a special material, no matter how miraculous the weapon was, it wouldn't be a problem. He did not place it in his heart at all. So Jibo Wen naturally did not place the sword in his heart. Since he was going to die anyway, before he died, it wouldn't matter much if he suffered another sword, or if he had a sword stuck in his body. If he could take the opportunity to destroy Jun Moxie's weapon, it could be considered as a side benefit. But he had never imagined that the blood of yellow flame would be such a perverse existence. It was definitely the most miraculous existence since the creation of the Xian continent. By the time Jibo Wen finally sensed that something was amiss, a third of the heaven-earth Ling Qi had already flowed through his body and into that demonic sword. Jibo Wen finally lost all hope. His heart was dead. As a Saint Monarch expert, he was actually reduced to a state where he did not even have the right to self-destruct. This was truly the greatest sorrow of the universe. Jibo Wen was flustered and exasperated. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. After a few more twists and turns, he exhausted the last bit of energy in his body and finally stopped the self-destruct mantra. Although he did not know what had happened, he was certain that the sword that was stuck in his body was definitely strange. The culprit that was absorbing the heaven-earth Ling Qi from his body was definitely it. That was why he disregarded everything and stopped the self-destruct, not wanting the blood of yellow flame to continue benefiting. But who would have thought that this action would add another heavy blow to his mental state? Chapter 1169. I just praise you for a bit, and you're done? Do you think it's easy for this daddy to come across such an opportunity? You're going to end it just like that? This is truly intolerable. The human can endure it, but the sword can't. Unable to endure it, and unable to absorb anything else, it naturally turned to absorbing Ji-Bo Wen's life essence and soul energy. F*CKU. You've ruined this Lord Sword's plans. This Lord Sword will destroy your soul. Ji-Bo Wen naturally understood the condition of his body the best, and when he sensed it, his heart was filled with shock. Now is not the time and place, and he couldn't help but feel that as long as there's life, there's hope. With a loud roar, he began to circulate his mental cultivation technique, intending to escape from the Holy Infant, hoping to make a comeback and take revenge. But to his despair, he discovered that his body was no longer under his control. That despicable sword had already sunk into his dantian, and had even pierced through his Holy Infant. At the same time, it was absorbing his life, chi, and soul essence at an incomparably fast speed. The Holy Infant was a miraculous existence that had form but no body, and there was almost nothing that could harm it. But right now, it was actually pierced through, and it was completely unable to escape. Ji-Bo Wen had the chance to break apart and escape, but he did not do so. Now that he wanted to do so, he could no longer escape. The affairs of the world were always so mysterious. As to why such a situation had occurred, the reason was simple. After the blood of Yellow Flame had absorbed a large amount of heaven-earthling chi, its strength had already far surpassed Ji-Bo Wen's. Most of the spiritual chi it had absorbed was the pure energy that Ji-Bo Wen had converted, and their attributes were almost the same. With the blood of Yellow Flame's current strength, it was able to suck Ji-Bo Wen to the point that he could not move at all. Any resistance was meaningless, and it would only cause the blood of Yellow Flame's energy to be drained away. Therefore, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, an extremely strange scene played out. Ji-Bo Wen's body slowly floated up and suddenly froze in midair. Then, his entire body withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Slowly, he became a dried-up corpse, but he continued to shrink. In the end, there was only a soft pu sound, as if someone had accidentally let out a muffled fart. His entire body completely disappeared in the air, turning into nothingness. The spiritual chi between heaven and earth was finally no longer turbulent. Only a single sword, flickering with cold light, froze in midair. This shocking turn of events caused everyone to be dumbstruck. What was going on? Earlier, they clearly saw that Ji-Bo Wen was also preparing to self-destruct. No, it should be more accurate to say that he had already self-destructed, causing everyone to retreat a few hundred meters away. However, they did not expect that this Saint Venerable's so-called self-destruction was not even as powerful as a normal person's fart. At least the stench would last for a while. What was going on? Just when everyone was in a state of confusion, the sword that was still hovering in the air let out a loud sword cry. Everyone had the illusion that the sound was actually filled with humanity. It was filled with a sense of satisfaction. This kind of feeling was incomparably wonderful. A sword could actually emit emotions like a human. Moreover, this sword chime was mixed with the feeling of a human burp after eating and drinking to his heart's content. Then, that sword shot up into the sky. An infinitely bright sword light, like a huge pillar of light, suddenly formed in midair. It was as thick as a house and several hundred meters long. A mountain in the distance, with a loud clang, was pierced through, forming a large round hole. Then, this sword quietly descended and flew into Jun Moxi's hands. It actually somersaulted a few times in his hands, like an excited child acting coquettishly. Then it suddenly disappeared without a trace. After eating its fill, it naturally needed to digest. This was the case for humans, and it was the same for swords. A bright light flashed in Jun Moxi's eyes. He had not expected that the blood of Yellow Flame's harvest this time would be so huge. No wonder it couldn't wait to enter the Hongjun Pagoda to digest and absorb it. The amount of heaven-earth spiritual chi that Ji-Bo Wen had obtained was undoubtedly huge, and the purity was not bad either. But this not bad still had to be graded. Compared to the energy of the blood of yellow flame itself, there was still a gap, not to mention compared to the purest heaven-earth spiritual chi in the Hongjun Pagoda. So it still needed to further purify the newly obtained heaven-earth spiritual chi. Only then could it truly transform into the most perfect energy for itself. And all of this required a process. But entering the Hongjun Pagoda to assimilate it would greatly shorten this process. This was the first time the blood of yellow flame had taken the initiative to enter the Hongjun Pagoda ever since it had formed its sword spirit. In the past, every time it came out, it would be like a mischievous child, always being forced to enter unwillingly. At this point, the outcome was already decided. The 3 Saint Venerables and the 2 holy emperors who had luckily escaped being sealed by the Xian Bing Xian and burned by the heavenly fire were all standing at the side in a daze. From start to end, they had not made a single move. Guhan's face was filled with a complicated expression, mixed with a trace of regret and desolation as he walked over with the rest. Jun Moxie slowly stood up from the ground. His face was still as pale as paper, and his internal organs were aching as if they were being torn apart. It was as if someone was using a sharp knife to cut at his brain, and the meridians in his body felt like they were about to break apart at any moment. His muscles and bones were also convulsing in pain. But Jun Moxie's face was still as calm as ever, his eyes sharp and calm. His back was straight, and he had a carefree look on his face. Senior Gu's complexion doesn't seem to be too good. The battle is just around the corner, and you should rest well. Senior Gu's strength can be said to be at the top of the Xian continent. If you cannot participate in this battle because of your illness, the Xian continent's chances of victory will be even slimmer. Jun Moxie said with a faint smile. His complexion doesn't look good. Looking at his 42 brothers being killed in front of his eyes, and he could not do anything to stop it, how could Guhan's complexion be good? What bullshit strength, the top of the Xian continent. If it was really the top of the Xian continent, would you dare to be so arrogant? As for resting, how could he have a mood to rest now? Not to mention that he was not sick. Even if he was sick, he would still endure it. Even if he had to die, he would die on the battlefield against the strange races. In truth, Jun Moxie's admiration for Guhan was also from the bottom of his heart. From Guhan's spasming face, as well as the deep teeth marks and traces of blood at the corner of his mouth, one could imagine that Guhan was not someone who did not care about his brothers. He cared a lot, too much. But for the sake of the big picture, Guhan had no choice but to watch from aside. This wasn't a cowardice, but a rare display of courage. The torment in Guhan's heart was definitely not any less than Xia Chong Tian's. In fact, it was even more intense. At least Xia Chong Tian still had a way to vent, to say and do everything he wanted to do. But Guhan could only hide everything in his heart, and even compromise with a smiling face. In the end, it was his brother who made the mistake first. Since there was a mistake, he had to take responsibility. Facing Jun Moxie's domineering attitude, for the sake of the continent, for the sake of the people, Guhan could only compromise. From the start, Jun Moxie had already made up his mind. If Guhan and the 3 Holy Lands really wanted to interfere and protect his people, then he would immediately gather his men and return to the Tian Fa forest without looking back. What a joke! Does this brother really have some bullshit obligation to protect the continent and the people? I can't even protect my own brothers, and you want me to be the one to protect the world? Compromise and compromise? Bullshit. Righteousness of the world? Even more bullshit. When would this young master be so bored as to joke around with the lives of my brothers? Tian Fa had already sacrificed too much for this continent. Could people really be so shameless? But Guhan did not disappoint Jun Moxie again. Manor Lord Jun. Too much. Too much. Your way of doing things is too much. Guhan's face seemed to have aged a few hundred years in an instant. The wrinkles on his face and the white hair on his head were all revealed. It was completely different from the original elegant and jade-like appearance. It was as if they were 2 different people. Too much. Really too much? Jun Moxie laughed strangely. No, it's still not enough. He pointed at the other 5 people. Aren't there still people who are not dead? The main culprit has even gotten justice. But haven't those accomplices still not given an explanation? Manor Lord June, could it be that you really want to kill all of them before you are satisfied? Guhan was so angry that he started breathing heavily. His eyes stared fixedly at June Moxie's face. June Moxie, can't you think about the upcoming battle and preserve some of your strength? Such words were already close to begging. The rage in June Moxie's heart flared up again. Now you know what it means to think about the upcoming battle and preserve some of your strength? Why didn't that damned Xia Chong Tian know this? If he was willing to lend a hand, would the Eagle Xiong army suffer such heavy casualties? Would the 8 Saint Venerables all fall? Would the Eagle King be sacrificed? But Jun Mo Xie and Gu Han looked at each other silently, not saying a single word. Gu Han's eyes were filled with pain, as well as a trace of sincere hope. June Moxie's heart skipped a beat. He heaved a sigh of relief and said coldly, "The main culprit has already been executed. I have no interest in continuing to tangle with those small characters. I'll let them off for now. But after the battle, these few people still have to give me an explanation. This kind of selfish and arrogant behavior, I will not let them off no matter what." Chapter 1170. Today's 4th chapter. Make up for what you owe, Chapter 19. This chapter has 4,300 words, making up for the lack of 1,000 words from yesterday. There's no need to trouble yourself. One of the Saint Venerables glared at June Moxie. Our brothers of thousands of years are all dead. We will not continue living in this world either. The only reason we haven't committed suicide is because we want to kill a few more strange races in this battle. That's all. We brothers have decided to sacrifice our lives in this battle. June Moxie, let's settle who owes whom in our next life. That's fine too. It's up to you to make this choice. June Moxie Lang said, "If you really have a next life, I will definitely accompany you." The 5 of them snorted coldly and walked out. They sat down cross-legged beside the huge pit and closed their eyes to regulate their breathing. The 5 of them did not even look at Guhan. They did not even look at their former comrades. Just the 5 of them alone. They could not be tolerated by Tian Fa or the Holy Lands. They really could not be tolerated by the world, the country, the people, and even themselves. Manor Lord June, you've helped your brothers vent their anger this time. But have you ever thought about how we are going to fight the outsiders in the coming battle? Guhan shook his head and sighed. The more he thought about it, the more he felt like there was a huge rock in his heart. But have you ever thought about it? So many of our experts have died in the Civil War, and we don't have enough battle power. How to fight? We'll fight how we should fight. June Moxie said indifferently, "We can't possibly stretch out our necks to take a knife, right?" "You." Guhan laughed in anger and stomped his feet. "June Moxie, do you know that if we lose this battle, you will have to bear the majority of the responsibility for your rash actions today? At that time, you will be the sinner of humanity, ah? Do you really not care about that at all?" Guhan was indeed regretful. It was too late for regrets. So many people had stood out earlier, causing the conflict between both sides to intensify. Guhan already knew that this matter was destined to not end peacefully, but he still held onto a tiny bit of hope. The law does not punish numerous offenders. Even with June Moxie's current strength, it was impossible for him to deal with so many experts. Even if June Moxie had other trump cards, in the face of righteousness, June Moxie would think twice and change his mind. After they had fought for a while and vented some of their anger, he would step forward to dissuade them. At that time, Xiachong Tian and Jibo also saw that June Moxie's strength was not to be trifled with, and a great battle indeed required each other's strength. He believed that both sides would give him face after considering their own positions and temporarily stop fighting. Even if they had to settle scores after the battle, it would be better than wasting their lives now. But Guhan had never expected this. June Moxie's first move was a thunderous attack. It was a trump card that could kill with a raise of the hand. Before the blink of an eye, a total of 40 of the less than 50 people had fallen into a state of eternal damnation. His life and death were all in the hands of Jun Moxie. And Xiaochang Tian hadn't even said a few words before he started a life and death battle with Jun Moxie. In less than half an instant's time, he was forced to self-destruct. Then Jibo, when even crazily took revenge on Jun Moxie and tried to harm the entire Tian FA camp. But in the end, he was also turned into a wisp of green smoke. All of this was too much for the eyes to take in. Everything was progressing too quickly. Guhan hadn't even thought of an excuse to stop it when everything was already settled. Finally, all he saw was Ji Bo-wen's bloody body floating in the air before he completely disappeared. Guhan's heart was in extreme pain. Jun Moxie's way of doing things was simply too tyrannical, too decisive. He didn't even give anyone any time to react. By the time he regained his senses, everything was already over. Even if all the responsibility is on my head, so what? Even if I really lost, so what? The so-called sinner title, do you think I care? Jun Moxie laughed coldly. Even if I was wrong, so what? When Jun Moxie, set my mind on something, I never care about right or wrong. I only ask if I should. I only ask if I have any guilt in my heart. Guhan was so angry that even his beard was trembling. Your actions are completely disregarding the bigger picture. Disregarding the bigger picture? If you disregard the bigger picture, you will definitely be wronged. That is simply too tiring and too stupid. It is precisely because Tian FA considered the bigger picture that they rushed to the battlefield the moment they saw the pillars of heavens collapsing, disregarding the price and sacrifices to stop the outsiders' attack. But what did they wait for? Only their allies watching coldly from the sidelines, making sarcastic remarks, completely disregarding their contributions and sacrifices. Could it be that Xiaochang Tian really cares about the bigger picture? Today's matter truly bites my heart. Jun Moxie shook his head and said indifferently, I've always been a very extreme person. I've never cared about the big picture, the big picture, the big picture, the small things, and so on. I only know that even if I can be wronged, my brothers cannot be wronged because of me. My brothers have been wronged and harmed, so I must definitely get it back. No matter what price I have to pay, I must get it back. If someone hurts my finger, I will definitely break their arm. That's all. I admit that I am not a successful leader, much less a qualified politician. I'm just a wanderer who does whatever I want. I only wish to have a clear conscience. Jun Moxie smiled lightly. It's not that my brothers cannot die. Since they came to this battlefield, they were already prepared to die. But that does not mean that they can be harmed to death. Dying on this battlefield, I have nothing to say, and I will be even more proud of my brothers. But the problem now is that they could have not died. But because of our allies, they were sacrificed innocently. So I must take revenge. I must get justice. I will never hesitate to do what I should do. Just like this battle, I could have chosen not to come. I believe that as long as I say the word, the entire evil monarch manor and Tian Fa forest will not let a single person appear in this world. But I still came. Killing is accompanied by sacrifice. It doesn't matter. My brothers and I have always been clear that since we came here, we did not intend to go back alive. He raised his head and looked at Guhan. No matter how tragic our deaths are, we have no complaints. But if we die for no reason, then we cannot. The Tian Fa Holy Lands and Evil Monarch Manor will never fear any strong enemies, but they will fear allies who stab them in the back. Since it was the people from the Holy Lands who caused my brothers to die for no reason, then I will seek justice. As for what kind of result this justice will lead to, I have never considered it, because there is no need to consider. If you consider too much, your hands and feet will be tied. Tiring. Jun Moxie grinned. How good is it to be like me, living a simpler life? Guhan was speechless, and the helplessness in his heart reached its peak. Meeting someone like Jun Moxie, no matter how much logic you have, you will not be able to explain it clearly. No matter what you do, he has his own set of principles. You may have 1,000 principles, but I have a set of rules. I do as I please. That's all. He doesn't even consider the safety of the people of the world. What else do you expect him to consider? A fellow who only cares about his own family, only cares about his own righteousness. What else can you say? According to what you said, if everyone is like you, then what will this world become? If this old man protects my brothers like you, what will the consequences be? Guhan was a little exasperated. Then, who will protect this continent? Who will be responsible for the entire human race? Who asked you to be responsible? Did anyone ask you to be responsible? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. What joke? Just look at this Xian continent. Has anyone really knelt down and begged you to protect them? I'm not afraid to tell you that you guys have nothing better to do. Look at how you have spoiled the people of this continent. Everyone does not know gratitude, does not think of repaying, and still wants to fight? Fight my ass. You. Guhan was so angry that he couldn't speak. In thousands of years, this was the first time he had been angered to such an extent. What about me? As for what you said, if you also protect your own people like me, what will the consequences be? Jun Moxie glared at him and said, I really don't know about this. Who would know about something that has never happened? After the battle, we will naturally know. Guhan had a feeling of wanting to vomit blood. This was clearly a fallacy. He really didn't know what kind of brain Jun Moxie had to have to say such things. Fight a battle, and we will know. Isn't this pure nonsense? But if they really fought a battle, wouldn't it be equivalent to the two of them joining hands to give the strange races a huge gift? Simply unreasonable. Looking at Guhan's flustered and exasperated expression, Jun Moxie suddenly laughed. Do you think that my words are very unpleasant to hear? Jun Moxie laughed mockingly. I can tell you responsibly that if you want people to unite against a common enemy, it will only be meaningful if you let them taste some bitterness first. The people at the back do not know anything. The entire continent is singing and dancing, and only you guys have protected the continent for more than 10,000 years. Let's not talk about whether you guys are truly great or not. If you guys tell others, will those people who have never seen the strange races believe you? No. They will only think that you guys are a bunch of liars. Humans, only when the pressure reaches a certain limit will they know how to resist. And it is only when they are seriously invaded that they will come together from a pile of loose sand. Jun Moxie said indifferently, and the three holy lands are the same, just as selfish and arrogant as the humans at the back. Jun Moxie said, when the strange races have already started the war, you guys can actually still look at the Alliance Army as a joke, wholeheartedly thinking of using the Alliance Army as cannon fodder. Heh, Senior Gu, don't blame me for speaking harshly. Even if the three holy lands are not destroyed in this battle, sooner or later, they will be destroyed because of this. For a whole 10,000 years, you guys have silently guarded the pillar of Heaven's mountains, a place where no one has ever set foot in. Silently sacrificing. It seems to be very noble. But don't forget, in these 10,000 years, all you guys have done is to develop the strength of the three holy lands, while the people of the continent do not have any sense of danger, and thus there is no further progress. In fact, the majority of the people do not even know of the existence of the strange races. But what about the strange races? Jun Moxie laughed mockingly. I remember you once said that you guys will rotate the Holy Emperor to train and raise your battle strength. But have you guys ever thought that while you are training your soldiers, aren't you also training the soldiers of the strange races for 10,000 years? What is the difference in this? Have you thought about it? Guhan was stunned, as if he was struck by lightning, sweat pouring down like rain. He was actually stunned. His heart suddenly started beating like his heart was palpitating. In that instant, he was dumbfounded, sweat pouring down his forehead like rainwater. The strange races have lived in barren and cold lands for a long time, but regardless of the adults or children, they all have the responsibility of invading the continent. Have you seen the corpses of the strange races on the battlefield today? Jun Moxie said. Most of them are dressed in rags. Some are even in tatters, and their faces are emaciated. I can be sure that on the side of the strange races, they're only the lowest battle strength. But let me tell you, among them, The weakest is at least at the peak of the Earth Xian realm. Most of them are Tian Xian strength. 200,000 Tian Xian. What kind of concept is that? Guhan stood there in a daze, as if he didn't hear Jun Moxie's words. This time, they indeed killed close to 200,000 in one go. The results are glorious, but this is only the strength that the strange races have gathered in half a day. Jun Moxie snorted coldly. May I ask, Senior Gu, how many Tian Xian warriors are there in our entire continent? How much time do you need to prepare to gather a 200,000 Tian Xian army? Not to mention half a day like the strange races. Even if I give you a month, do you think you can do it? Guhan's face flushed red and then turned pale white. Peak experts, perhaps both sides are about the same, but the middle and lower levels are far from it. In the past war for seizing the heavens, it was only a battle between a few people and not a large-scale war. But now, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains have collapsed. The strange race's battle strength is also fully displayed. All of this is caused by your 3 holy lands. Junimo Xie said mercilessly, that's because the people at the back don't have any pressure. Without pressure, they won't practice hard. Therefore, even though the Xian continent is vast and rich in resources, its experts are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Even if there are experts, when one appears with great difficulty, they are immediately recruited by your 3 holy lands. To put it nicely, you want them to join the 3 holy lands in the name of nobility. But after joining, how many of them become small fries? How many of them are unable to recover from the setback? And these people were originally the seeds of the various lands. They had the hope of nurturing countless outstanding disciples and strengthening the continent's strength. But they were all locked up in the deep mountains by you. Under such circumstances, the strange races are all soldiers, and the people of our continent are just a bunch of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Even if there are only a few million strange races, there are still a few million Earth Xian, Tian Xian people. Jun Moxie said sharply, and this is the result of you helping to train the soldiers. Everyone fell silent, carefully thinking about Jun Moxie's words. Your 3 holy lands treat the war for seizing the heavens as an everlasting glory, as an honor that only you have. You would rather taste loneliness in the deep mountains, waiting for the glory that the next sacrifice will bring, than to sow more seeds on the continent. You treat this kind of war as an honor, and it's your personal glory, but you don't allow others to touch it. Even if it's helped with good intentions, you disdain it, and even want to get rid of it. Tian Fa is the best example. And the result of this is that the Xian continent will become weaker and weaker, while the strange races will become stronger and stronger. Jun Moxie did not stop. Tian Fa always helps you win the war for seizing the heavens for the sake of righteousness, but you think that they are the ones stealing and sharing your glory. You actually feel uncomfortable because of this and want to stand in the position of saint forever. You actually want to kill all of your allies. Chapter 1171. All of you, tell me, isn't the current situation laughable? Jun Moxie's gaze swept across the faces of the upper echelons of the 3 holy lands, his gaze cold and sharp. Today, your people framed the Alliance army, causing 5,000 saints and the Holy Emperor to die in battle within 6 hours. I'm just asking for an explanation, and I've become the center of the continent. Other than slapping labels, can the 3 holy lands still have some shame? Everyone who was looked at by him lowered their heads in shame. Was what Jun Moxie said not reasonable? No, what Jun Moxie said should be too reasonable. It was because of their loftiness that the 3 holy lands had fallen to such a state. If we lose this battle and the human civilization falls into decline, then who is the biggest sinner? Jun Moxie retorted. Who is the main culprit that caused the strange races to invade the Xian continent? Who is the mastermind behind the weakening of the continent? Is it me? If it's not me, then who is it? It's not you, it's us. Guhan's face immediately turned haggard. He sighed deeply and said gloomily, "We are the sinners of the continent." His sharp eyes suddenly became lifeless. He raised his head to look at the sky and suddenly laughed bitterly. It turns out that the Holy Land, which has always been dedicated to protecting the peace of the continent for more than 10,000 years, has actually become the biggest sinner? How ironic is this? Not only Guhan, even Imo Wudao and the rest felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They were struck dumb by Jun Moxie's earth-shattering words, standing rooted to the ground in a daze. Their faces were completely devoid of their usual vigor. So, the nameless hero that had protected the Xian continent actually had another identity, training soldiers for the strange races, to make those perverted trash even sharper, even stronger, and to cause the Xian continent to fall. Could it be that these 10,000 years have been wrong? Guhan let out a long sigh, not knowing if he was asking someone else or himself. His voice was so soft that even he cannot hear it. Then, he turned around and slowly walked toward the place where there were no traces of people. He walked from afar, step by step, slowly and solemnly. He came to a spacious area in the distance and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed, not moving at all. Mei Shuiyin furrowed her brows as she contemplated Jun Moxie's words. Was Jun Mo Xie's words correct? Naturally, it was correct, but it was not absolutely correct. At least, it was not completely correct. In these tens of thousands of years, the three holy lands had given their all to protect the human race and the Xian continent. This was an achievement that no one could deny. Even if there was Shazi, it couldn't be completely denied, not even by anyone. But it was also because the three holy lands placed too much importance on this achievement, this glory, and in order to enjoy this glory alone, they used all sorts of methods, ultimately leading to the Xian continent's overall weakness. Once a person thought too highly of himself, he would consider everything beneath his notice. In order to maintain their transcendent position, the three holy lands did not wish for anyone or any power to share their achievements. Thus, they used all sorts of methods to attack other powers. In reality, other than the three holy lands and Tian Fa, there were many other powerful powers that rose up in the Xian continent in these tens of thousands of years. But because the three holy lands did not allow any more powerful powers to appear, they killed them one by one. The reason why Tian Fa was spared was because they were not humans in their bones. They would never be able to share the glory of the three holy lands protecting the human race. That was why they were able to survive until now, until the appearance of Jun Moxie. Don't think too much. That will only make things difficult for yourself. Jun Moxie looked at her. How can the so-called merits and demerits be so easily determined? It has never been determined by one person's words. All the merits and demerits of 1,000 years are just fleeting clouds. They're all reasons that humans use to convince themselves to do something. Mei Shuiyan's body shook as she stared at him. Her heart was in turmoil. In the battle just now, I've exhausted a lot of my energy. I need to rest for a while, just in case. Jun Moxie said, "Take this sword with you. If the strange races come to invade, you just need to throw it out. I believe that it has the ability to deal with most of the dangers." With a flip of Jun Moxie's hand, the blood of yellow flame appeared in his hand. With a light hum, it flew into Mei Shuiyan's hand on its own. The blade of the sword was held horizontally, naturally displaying a domineering stance. In that instant, Mei Shuiyan suddenly had an extremely strange feeling. It was as if the sword was greeting her. A voice even appeared in the lake of her heart. "Hi, beautiful lady, how are you?" Mei Shuiyan was absolutely sure that there was no sound coming from the sword. But that voice, or that feeling, had directly entered the lake of her heart. It made her deeply feel that this was definitely not an auditory hallucination. Mei Shuiyan was shocked. She looked at the sword in bewilderment and disbelief in her eyes. "Beautiful lady, there's no need to look. It's really me." The resplendent light on the sword shone once more. It was as if there was a mischievous child blinking its eyes. And in Mei Shuiyan's heart, She could clearly feel this point. This shock was no small matter. She felt her hand tremble, and the sword almost fell. She hurriedly turned to look at June Moxie. Only then did she realize that June Moxie had already disappeared. Right now, the blood of yellow flame, after swallowing so much heaven and earth spiritual chi, and then swallowing all the blood essence and soul cultivation of a saint monarch, had already surpassed June Moxie in terms of battle strength. Of course, the so-called surpassing was referring to June Moxie without using those sacred arts. Otherwise, as long as June Dashao activated his 5-element sacred art, he would still be able to easily subdue the blood of yellow flame. But this kind of suppression only appeared on June Moxie alone. With the blood of yellow flame's current strength, experts below the 3rd level of Saint Monarch were not even in its eyes. For Guhan, even if he used all his strength to deal with the blood of yellow flame, it would still be difficult for him to gain any advantage. If he was not careful, he might even fall under the blood of yellow flame's sword. With him protecting Mei Shuiyin and the rest, June Moxie was naturally very assured. So without any hesitation, he directly entered the Hongjun Pagoda to recuperate. Right now, the most important thing was to treat his injuries as soon as possible. When Mei Shuiyin was with June Moxie, she had seen the blood of yellow flame countless times. She could be said to be extremely familiar with this sword, but she had never imagined that this sword could actually be so demonic. Was it still a sword? This was simply a demon sword, a demonic sword. Beautiful lady, although this sword is handsome, elegant, beautiful, lovable, and easy to make people fall in love at first sight. Beautiful lady, you don't have to be so excited, right? The blood of yellow flame originally wanted to say this lord, but immediately felt that it was a little inappropriate to call himself this lord in front of a peerless beauty. Furthermore, with the relationship between this beauty and its master, its arrogance would lead to serious consequences. So it very sensibly changed its form of address. It's really you who's speaking? What I mean is, it's you who's communicating with my heart. Mei Shuiyin's beautiful eyes widened, and she couldn't help but ask with uncertainty. The blood of yellow flame sighed. Beautiful sister, how can you say that? No matter what, we're old acquaintances. We've already met more than once or twice. You're actually so unfamiliar with this lord, with this sword, acting as if you don't know me. This is really too boring. This sword is really too sad. After saying that, it actually did a somersault in Mei Shuiyin's hand, scattering a brilliant sword flower in the air, forming the shape of a huge lotus. The lotus gradually bloomed, and it was so beautiful that it was too much for one's eyes to take in. It was a certain sword that was using its actions to express its depression of being ignored. Then, a certain sword pointed downwards, and with a schwa sound, it landed vertically in Mei Shuiyin's palm. With the sharp sword tip of the blood of yellow flame, it suddenly stabbed into Mei Shuiyin's slender hand, but Mei Shuiyin didn't feel any pain at all. This scene, in the eyes of outsiders, was like Mei Shuiyin holding June Moxie's sword, giving an extremely beautiful performance. Everyone couldn't help but sigh in admiration. This level of swordsmanship is truly unparalleled. One couldn't help but be impressed. Beautiful sister, you believe me now, right? Ha ha, kikik. The blood of yellow flame's consciousness laughed delightedly, and it was obviously imitating June Moxie's voice. The only person it was familiar with was June Dashao. Even if it wanted to imitate someone else, it didn't seem to be able to. Mei Shuiyin finally confirmed it, finally believed it. Although she acknowledged it rationally, her emotions were still a little hazy. She felt like she was dreaming, and she couldn't help but sigh in admiration. You imitated Mo Xie's voice really well. I really thought that Mo Xie was pranking me just now. Naturally, her voice was very, very soft. Otherwise, if others heard it, they would think that this Tian Fa Emperor had gone crazy. That's right, if I still can't imitate that fellow's voice, then I would have really been abused by him for nothing. You don't know, back then, other than the pride in its voice, The blood of yellow flame's voice was filled with regret towards the end. And didn't Monsieur abuse you? Mei Shuiyin was shocked. AI, it's really unbearable to recall the past. Every time I mention it, it's all blood and tears. The blood of yellow flame's voice was so heavy that it could make one cry. Hammer after hammer, truly cutting me. Mei Shuiyin rolled her eyes. This is the so-called abuse? You're a sword, all right? If you don't hammer after hammer, how are you going to temper yourself? How are you going to take form? But she still consoled. He did that for you, for your own good. I know, I understand, but I'm really in pain, it's not fake, The blood of yellow flame said tearfully. Mei Shuiyin was completely speechless. This sword's mood clearly changed very quickly. A moment ago, it was still crying, but suddenly it was in high spirits. And, beauty, how about this? I carry you on my back, and we fly one round? Let's go for a ride. Carry me on your back and fly one round. Go for a ride? Mei Shuiyin felt a little dizzy. How? What ride? Chapter 1172. Mei Shuiyin shuddered at the image she had conjured up in her mind. Most importantly, it was too dangerous. With the sharpness of the blood of yellow flame, there was probably nothing in this world that could face it head-on. I didn't say it clearly just now. It should be you stepping on me, and I'll bring you flying. The blood of yellow flame had a strong desire to show off. Let's fly to the other side of the mountain for a stroll. Who knows? We might even be able to kill a few strange races, Saint Venerables and Saint Monarchs, to nourish ourselves. This is killing two birds with one stone. Are you satisfied? Be happy. Be happy. What? No way. Mei Shuiyin jumped in fright. Like master, like sword, like bird. This sentence was really a famous saying. It was really not wrong at all. This blood of yellow flame was as arrogant as Jun Moxie. No. Even Jun Daxiao was not as arrogant as him. To actually say something like killing a few Saint Venerables and Saint Monarchs to nourish themselves? What was this? What was the meaning of it? There was no need to nourish themselves like that, right? Besides, going to the other side of the mountain, that was their territory. The only result of going there would be them using themselves to nourish themselves, right? Don't worry, nothing will happen. I'm here. I'll handle everything. I guarantee that you'll go there valiantly and return with an awe-inspiring aura. The blood of yellow flame tried its best to encourage her. This fellow was usually restricted by Jun Moxie too much. This time, he finally came out on his own, but Jun Moxie wasn't around. This was such a good opportunity. How could he miss it? No way. There's no room for discussion. Mei Shuiyin rejected it without hesitation. No need to say any more. Then, she grabbed the hilt of the sword and walked back to the army. Hey, beautiful sister, let's discuss this again. I'm very powerful, you don't know, but who in this world can withstand a blow from this sword? The blood of yellow flame continued to encourage her, but Mei Shuiyin turned a deaf ear and walked back. He allowed this fellow to tirelessly bombard his consciousness. No matter how much he tried to convince her, he still couldn't agree. Long Crane immediately dispatched the warriors of the Crane tribe, 10 people in a team, and stopped every 1,000 miles. They formed observation points around the entire pillar of Heaven's mountains, keeping a close eye on the movements of the outsiders. If there are any changes, immediately inform me with the soaring dragon. Mei Shuiyin didn't stop and immediately made arrangements. Yes, the Crane King stood up and was about to walk out of the room. Wait a moment. Choose a black crane that flies at a faster speed and return to where we came from. Urge Leonis and company to speed up. You must meet up as soon as possible. Yes. Send another Xian crane to return to the mainland as soon as possible and contact the Dongfang family, Xikong family, Duanmu family, and Blizzard Silver City. Tell them to immediately spread the news of the strange races invading the Xian continent, as well as the dangerous situation of the war for seizing the heavens. Immediately summon all the cultivators above the Tian Xian level to come and help. Also, order all the 9th level Xian beasts in the Tian FA forest to come here immediately. All of them. As she said that, Mei Shuyan suddenly raised her voice and said to the three holy lands, "Mo Wu Dao, send a few people to go back with my brothers and inform the affiliated families of the three holy lands. All the experts above the Tian Xian level must come and join the battle. I'll make the arrangements immediately." On this matter, Mo Wu Dao didn't dare to be negligent. Without any hesitation, he immediately sent his most capable men to Tian Fa. Bear King, Tiger King, immediately gather all the men and prepare for battle. No matter what movements there are, the two of you, lead your men to deal with them immediately. Yes, big sister. The two kings' eyes were bloodshot as they answered loudly. Solitary Eagle, Feng Wanyan, please lead your men from the evil monarch manor and cooperate with Tiger King and Bear King. Yes. The two of them had a serious look on their faces as they hurriedly answered. Bailey Luo Yun, Lung Ao, I won't give you any direction or area of action. The two of you will lead your men and move freely from this moment onwards. Kill the strange races as the top priority. With a command, the flock of Xian cranes rose into the sky. As their wings fluttered, they flew far away and disappeared into the clouds. I hope we can make it in time. Mei Shuyan looked at the fading shadows of the Xian cranes in the sky, her face full of worry as she mumbled to herself. As Mei Shuyan gave a few more orders, the atmosphere became heavy once again. It became more and more intense. What on earth were those detestable two-headed conjoined freaks thinking about in the fog-covered territory of the non-human kind? The only thing that was certain was that those detestable fellows were definitely gathering their own forces now and deploying. Once the time was ripe, they would launch a frenzied attack. At that time, they would move in an organized and disciplined manner. They would no longer charge forward like a bunch of loose sand like before. At that time, there would definitely be an earth-shattering battle. Mei Shuyan looked longingly at her brothers in front of her, as well as the countless Tian Fa warriors who were busy with their tasks. At that time, how many of her brothers would fall into eternal slumber on this land? Thinking of this, Mei Shuyan only felt waves of pain in her heart. How good would it be if there were no strange races in this world? In another situation, Jun Moxie sat cross-legged in the Hongjun Pagoda. Countless strands of primordial purple chi rushed into his body like a tsunami, cleansing his body, washing his meridians, and healing his injuries. When he first came in, Jun Moxie ate a set of 7 colored holy fruits and a piece of exquisite lotus root, without a word. Then, when his injuries were slightly healed, he made up his mind and swallowed a drop of golden jade fluid. The battle was imminent, and his current strength was still lacking. He needed to improve it further. Otherwise, this battle would still bode ill rather than well. Jun Moxie decided that when he came out, he would use the spirit vein fragments to improve the strength of the Tian Fa warriors as a whole. Even if they would die under the heavenly tribulation in the future, it was better than dying here now. The most important thing was to deal with the battle before them. In a flash, 3 days had passed. There was no movement from the strange races at all. Such an unexpected silence made even the people from the 3 holy lands feel that it was abnormal. This group of fellows, how could they be so calm this time? The Xian Crane tribe, who was in charge of security along the way, also did not send any warnings. After 3 days of eruption, the volcano had already been completely extinguished. The temperature was naturally dropping rapidly. Although the temperature was still unbearably hot, it was already much better than a few days ago. And Jun Dashao had already come out of seclusion last night. In these few days, the people from the 3 holy lands were all resting and didn't come to disturb them. Both sides were on their own, not interfering with each other's business. Everyone seemed to have become mute in these few days. Even if there was something that they needed to talk about, they would use voice transmissions instead of meeting each other. Since it would be awkward to meet each other, they might as well not meet each other. This way, they could save a lot of unnecessary trouble. There was only silence. Both sides seemed to be waiting for that moment of glory to erupt. In fact, even when Jun Moxie reappeared, this silent situation had not changed at all. But the moment Jun Dashao appeared, countless bolts of lightning immediately followed. The answer was obvious. The lightning tribulation had arrived again. Under the powerful effects of the seven-colored holy fruit, the exquisite jade lotus, and the golden jade fluid, Jun Dashao's cultivation had risen once again. And it directly rose to the peak of the 4th level of Saint Monarch Realm. It wasn't that Jun Moxie himself was amazing, but that he was really too generous. If the golden jade fluid that was used on Jun Dashao's body was used to refine medicine, it could at least raise the strength of a 1,000-man Tian Xian army to Shun Xian's level. The increase in strength also meant that the lightning tribulation was coming. The situation of Jun Dashao's tribulation was directly turned into a performance. Even Gu Han, who had been sitting motionless for the past few days, also came to watch. It was too outrageous. It was really outrageous. Countless spectators involuntarily had the urge to die when Jun Moxie was going through the tribulation. In this world, there was actually someone who went through the tribulation in a state of deep sleep. Under the lightning and thunder, Jun Moxie was lying on a recliner that had been taken out of nowhere, sleeping soundly. The lightning that filled the sky struck his head and body. The lightning tribulation could be said to be abnormally accurate. Not a single one was wasted, and all of them hit their targets. But at the same time when they hit their targets, they strangely disappeared. Until the end of the tribulation, the bamboo recliner under Jun Moxie's buttocks was still as green as before, and there seemed to be no signs of blackening. What did this mean? It meant that all the lightning tribulation did not overflow onto the recliner at all. All of it was easily dissipated by Jun Dashao, and not a single drop was missed. Was this possible? Since the beginning of time, there had never been such a situation. But this impossible thing had happened right in front of everyone's eyes. Under the stares of everyone who looked as if they had seen a ghost, Jun Dashao's snoring finally stopped. He stretched and sat up from the recliner, looking a little dazed. He yawned, rubbed his eyes, and said, "A good sleep, really comfortable." Then he suddenly raised his head to look at the clear sky, and smacked his lips as if he had not had enough, and said, "HM, the lightning tribulation is over. It's over just like that? It's over just like that?" This sentence made everyone who had gone through the tribulation feel an urge to faint, and they almost wanted to bang their heads against the wall. Isn't this too sick? What kind of explanation is this? He used such a strange method to go through the tribulation, and he actually succeeded. Thinking back to the time when he went through the tribulation, that thrilling experience of narrowly escaping death, enduring the immense pain that felt as if a dozen layers of skin had been peeled off while he was still alive. Then look at him, after sleeping. Only his clothes were a little wrinkled, but his face was glowing, and he was full of energy. Isn't the gap between us too big? I really don't have the face to live anymore. It's said that the strange races are all sick, but the real biggest sick person is obviously this Jun Moxie. Too sick, too. I can't find any words to describe it. It really makes me speechless. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.